Hey there, wanderers of the night and seekers of stories. If you're enjoying this gentle journey through time, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Your thoughts keep the flame alive. Let's ease into the vast, whispering plains of the ancient Andes where the stars cradle the earth like a lullaby. Imagine, if you will, the high plateaus of the first millennium's Andes, where the Tiwanaku people tended to their world with quiet rhythm. This is not a tale of grand battles or shadowed secrets, but a soft whisper of everyday life, far from the myths that often cloak the past. Here, in the thin air above Lake Titicaca, herders moved like threads in a woven tapestry, their days woven with the fleece of their faithful companions. The sun rose slowly over jagged peaks, painting the sky in hues of soft lavender and gold, as if inviting the world to awaken gently. These herders, draped in thick wool ponchos dyed in earthy tones of ochre and deep green, stepped out into the cool dawn. The fabric, spun from the fleeces of their llamas, hugged their bodies like a second skin, warding off the bite of the morning chill. Each poncho was a masterpiece of simple craft, its fringes swaying with every step, carrying the faint scent of lanolin and highland herbs. As they guided their herds across the undulating plains, the air carried a crispness that nipped at the nose, a reminder of the altitudes where the world felt both vast and intimate. The wind whispered through the grasses, a soothing murmur that blended with the occasional bleat of a llama, each call a soft inquiry into the day's possibilities. Life for these Tiwanaku herders was a dance of patience and partnership, etched into the rhythms of the land. They rose with the first light, their movements deliberate and unhurried, as if the sun itself moved at their pace. Guiding the llamas, those sturdy, long-necked guardians of the plains, was no mere task. It was a bond forged in the quiet hours of dawn. A herder might reach out a calloused hand to stroke the soft fur of a young cria, feeling the warmth beneath his fingers, a warmth that spoke of trust built over seasons. The llamas, with their alert eyes and gentle gaits, responded in kind, their bleats a melodic chorus that echoed across the expanse. One might imagine the sound as a lullaby itself, soft and repetitive, like waves lapping against a distant shore. The high plains stretched out endlessly, a sea of golden iku grass that rustled underfoot, releasing an earthy aroma with every step. In the distance, the snow-capped peaks of the Andes stood like silent sentinels, their white caps glistening under the midday sun. The air was alive with subtle sensations, the cool breeze that carried hints of wild mint and dew-kissed earth, the faint crunch of pebbles beneath sandals woven from alpaca wool. Herders moved in a steady procession, their llamas following in a line, each animal's breath visible in the crisp air, a misty exhalation that hung like delicate fog. It was a world where time slowed, where the herder's heartbeat synced with the plodding steps of his herd, creating a harmony that soothed the soul. In Tiwanaku society, these herders were the unseen threads that held the community together, their work as essential as the rivers that fed the fields. Archaeological reports from sites like the monumental ruins near Lake Titicaca reveal traces of their existence, scattered remnants of stone corrals and wool fragments preserved in the dry soil. These findings paint a picture of a people who thrived on the fringes of the empire, their lives centered around the care of their animals. A herder might spend hours each day inspecting his llamas for signs of wear, gently parting their fur to check for ticks or wounds, his touch as light as a feather. The bond was profound. These animals were not just livestock, but companions, their wool providing warmth, their dung fueling fires that crackled softly in the evening, releasing a woody smoke that mingled with the scent of brewing chicha. As the day unfolded, the herders traversed paths worn smooth by generations, their ponchos billowing slightly in the wind. The chilly gusts from the mountains carried a refreshing chill, one that invigorated rather than discomforted, wrapping around the body like a cool embrace. Sounds filled the air, the rhythmic patting of hooves on the earth, the occasional snort of a llama shaking off the morning dew, and the distant call of an Andean goose gliding overhead. Each sensation wove into the fabric of daily life, creating a tapestry of peace. It might whisper in the way. A herder chuckled at a particularly stubborn llama, nudging it along with a playful tap, as if sharing an inside joke with an old friend. Yet amid this serene existence, there lies a gentle mystery that adds a layer of wonder to the story. The names of these herders, the individuals who walked these plains with such quiet dedication, have faded into the mists of time. Tiwanaku archaeological evidence, from pottery shards etched with abstract symbols to the layouts of ancient settlements, speaks volumes about their culture, but remains silent on personal identities. No inscriptions or tablets bear the mark of a herder's name, leaving us to ponder the faces behind the ponchos. Perhaps it was a deliberate choice, a humility woven into their way of life, where the collective herd overshadowed individual glory. This enigma invites us to imagine, What stories might those unnamed herders have told around the fire, their voices blending with the crackle of flames and the soft bleats of their charges? It's a mystery that hums like a distant melody, reminding us that some bonds are eternal, even if their tellers remain unknown. The herders' days continued in this vein, a cycle of care and contemplation. They might pause at midday to rest in the shade of a rocky outcrop, the sun warming their faces as they shared a simple meal of quinoa porridge, its nutty flavor mingling with the salt of the air. The taste was earthy and comforting, a reminder of the land's bounty. Around them, the llamas grazed contentedly, their coats shimmering in the light, each fiber a testament to the herder's skillful hand. Evenings brought a deeper calm, as the stars emerged like scattered diamonds, and the herders settled into their stone shelters, the wool of their ponchos pulled close against the dropping temperatures. The wind softened to a whisper, carrying the faint scent of night-blooming flowers, and the llamas huddled together, their collective warmth a shared embrace. Through the lens of Tiwanaku archaeology, we glimpse more of this world. Reports from excavations at sites like Pucara and the ceremonial centers near the lake describe the herders' tools simple yet ingenious, like the wooden prods carved with geometric patterns, or the slings used to gather wayward animals.
And so, with the day drawing to a close, thoughts naturally drifted toward the morrow's endeavors, where new tales might unfold in the ever-turning weave of life.
A herder might use a sling not with force, but with a gentle flick, guiding a llama back to the path as if coaxing a child. Such details, drawn from the careful study of ancient remains, highlight the depth of their knowledge, passed down through oral traditions that left no written trace. As the nights grew longer, the herders found solace in the stars, their twinkling light a canopy of dreams. The bond with their animals deepened, a silent language of gestures and sounds that needed no words. One could almost hear the subtle wit in their interactions. A llama's playful nudge met with a knowing smile, as if to say, "We've been through this before, my friend." It was a life of subtle joys, where the chill of the wind was a familiar companion, and the bleat of a llama a comforting refrain. And so, as we linger in this peaceful realm, we prepare to venture further into the tapestry of Tiwanaku life. In the next segment, we'll explore other facets of this ancient world, but for now, let the winds of the high plain in the hushed dawn of ancient Cusco, where the first light kissed the rugged peaks and the air carried whispers of mist, a figure emerged from the shadows of legend. Manco Capac, the mythical founder, stepped forth as if woven from the very threads of the earth itself. Clad in robes of finely spun alpaca wool, dyed in earthy hues of ochre and deep green, he moved with a grace that seemed to echo the gentle sway of the surrounding grasslands. The fabric rustled softly against his skin, a faint whisper like leaves brushing in the wind, as he gazed upon the budding settlements nestled in the fertile valley. Here, amid the terraced hills and murmuring streams, the world felt eternal, a cradle of stone and soil where time unfolded like a slow, dreamlike river. Long before the sun climbed high, Manco Capac had been called from the depths of Tiwanaku, that enigmatic cradle of ancient wonders far to the south. Oral tales passed down through generations spoke of him rising from the sacred waters, a gift from the gods in Tai and Pachamama, to bring order to a scattered people. His emergence was no thunderous event, but a quiet unfolding like the first drops of rain on parched earth. In those early days, Cusco was but a cluster of thatched huts and stone enclosures, where families gathered around flickering hearths. The air was alive with the scent of roasting maize and the faint, sweet smoke of herbal offerings, curling upward like invisible threads connecting earth to sky. Manco Capac, with his strong, weathered features and eyes like polished obsidian, became the heartbeat of this nascent world, guiding rituals that bound the community to the rhythms of nature. He led the first ceremonies under the vast, star-strewn canopy, where the night sky unfolded like a tapestry of infinite depth. Dressed in his woven robes, adorned with subtle patterns of geometric designs that mimicked the mountain's contours, he stood at the center of a sacred circle. The ground beneath his feet was cool and yielding, scattered with fine grains of sand that shifted gently with each step, whispering secrets of the earth. As he raised his arms, the ritual began with the soft chant of ancient words, their cadence as soothing as a lullaby carried on the breeze. Incense wisps from burning munia leaves drifted lazily through the air, their earthy aroma mingling with the crisp night chill, evoking a sense of peace that enveloped all who gathered. The people, simple folk in tunics of rough wool, watched in reverent silence as he invoked the spirits, his voice a low, melodic hum that blended with the rustling grass and the distant call of night birds. In these moments, Manco Capac embodied the essence of creation, a bridge between the mortal realm and the divine. The legends whispered that he had journeyed from Tiwanaku, where sunken temples lay hidden beneath the placid surface of Lake Titicaca. Those submerged sanctuaries, shrouded in mystery, were said to hold the keys to the world's beginnings, their stone walls etched with symbols that spoke of forgotten eras. No one dared to plumb their depths, for the waters guarded their secrets with a gentle but unyielding veil, their surfaces rippling like the breath of ancient gods. Manco Capac often paused in his rituals to contemplate this enigma, his gaze drifting southward as if he could see through the veil of distance. The sunken temples, perhaps once vibrant with life and light, now rested in eternal quiet, their presence a subtle puzzle that added a layer of wonder to his story. It was as if the earth itself had sighed and drawn them under, preserving their wisdom for those who might one day understand. As the rituals unfolded, the sensory world around Cusco came alive in harmonious detail. The warmth of the sun's first rays on his robes felt like a tender embrace, while the cool dew on the grass beneath his bare feet grounded him in the present. He would light small fires of sacred wood, their flames flickering with a soft glow that danced like fireflies in the dusk, releasing scents of resin and wild herbs that lingered in the air. The people joined him, their movements synchronized in a dance as old as the hills, the faint patter of their feet on the earth creating a rhythm like a heartbeat. Subtle wit threaded through his teachings, for Manco Capac was known to offer gentle jests in his stories, like comparing the stubborn rocks of the landscape to wise elders who refused to budge, reminding all that even the mightiest foundations began with humility. Yet, in the shadows of these peaceful gatherings, there lingered a detached awareness of the world's impermanence. The oral traditions spoke of challenges that came with founding a new way of life, not in conquest or conflict, but in the quiet struggles against the elements. A sudden storm might sweep through, its winds howling like distant laments, leaving behind a trail of bent grasses and scattered leaves, a reminder of nature's dual nature. Manco Capac addressed these with a calm detachment, focusing on the consequences, rather than the turmoil, how the rains replenished the soil, how the winds carried seeds to new ground. His role was one of stewardship, guiding the people to plant their first fields with seeds that promised abundance, the soil's rich aroma rising as they tilled, a earthy perfume that spoke of growth and renewal. Through the cycles of day and night, Manco Capac's presence wove itself into the fabric of Cusco. He taught the arts of weaving, his fingers deftly working dyed yarns under the soft light of oil lamps, their warm glow casting gentle shadows that played across the walls of simple dwellings. The textures of the robes he wore, soft, intricate, and enduring, mirrored the community's spirit, each thread a story of resilience and beauty. Sensory details abounded. The cool touch of mountain water as he purified offerings, the crisp bite of high-altitude air that filled the lungs with clarity, the subtle melody of a flute carved from bamboo, its notes floating like feathers on the wind. These elements created a lullaby-like atmosphere, where every ritual felt like a soothing embrace, drawing the people closer to the divine. The mystery of Tiwanaku's sunken temples remained a constant undercurrent, a puzzle that Manco Capac pondered during solitary moments atop a hillock overlooking the valley. The oral tales described how these temples had sunk not in wrath, but in a gentle subsidence, as if the earth had cradled them to sleep. Perhaps they held artifacts of gold and stone, etched with glyphs that told of celestial alignments, their silence a testament to time's patient flow. Manco Capac's connection to this place was profound. It was from there that he had been sent, emerging with a golden staff that glowed faintly in the moonlight, a symbol of his divine mandate. He never spoke of it with urgency, but with a subtle wit, likening the temples to forgotten dreams that surface in quiet reflection, reminding his followers that some mysteries were meant to unfold slowly, like the dawn over the Andes. As the seasons turned, Manco Capac's legacy took root in the hearts of the people, his rituals becoming a cornerstone of their existence. The air grew fragrant with the blooms of native flowers, their petals soft underfoot, and the nights filled with the soothing chorus of crickets and owls. He ensured that every gathering ended with a shared meal, the taste of fresh quinoa and tubers warming the soul, fostering a sense of unity that felt as enduring as the mountains themselves. Through it all, his story remained a beacon of gentle wisdom, a narrative spun from the threads of oral tradition, untouched by the clamor of conquest or strife. And as the stars began to fade with the approach of another dawn, the tale of Manco Capac lingered like a faint echo, inviting reflection on the mysteries yet to unfold. Whispers of other stories waited on the horizon, ready to weave their own patterns into the tapestry of time. In the hushed expanse of the Andean highlands, where the earth cradles ancient secrets beneath its vast, windswept plains, the ruins of Tiwanaku emerged like whispers from a forgotten dream. Here, in the first millennium of the Common Era, the sunken temples stood as enigmatic sanctuaries, their stone walls sinking gently into the soil as if the ground itself yearned to reclaim them. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of dew-kissed earth and distant rain, inviting one to linger in contemplation. Picture this scene at dawn, when the first light of the sun filters through the thin mountain air, casting long shadows across the courtyards. Priests clad in simple ponchos, woven from the coarse wool of highland llamas, move with deliberate grace among the weathered stones. Their garments drape loosely, the fabric whispering against their skin in the gentle breeze, a subtle armor against the chill that seeps from the ground. These figures, stoic and serene, gather in the semi-subterranean temple's structures deliberately built below ground level, their walls lined with precisely carved andesite blocks that fit together like pieces of a cosmic puzzle. The cold stone beneath their bare feet radiates a persistent coolness, a reminder of the earth's unyielding depth, while the faint echo of their breaths mingles with the soft rustle of leaves overhead. As the priests begin their rituals, a calming rhythm takes hold, like the steady pulse of a heartbeat in the quiet of night. They chant in low, resonant tones, the words drawn from an ancient language lost to time, their voices weaving through the air and bouncing off the temple walls in gentle reverberations. Imagine the sound, a soft, undulating murmur that rises and falls, echoing faintly as if the stones themselves are humming in response. The chants speak of celestial alignments and earthly abundance, invoking the sun's benevolent gaze to bless the harvests and ward off the harsh Andean winters. A wisp of incense, perhaps from sacred herbs gathered from the surrounding slopes, drifts lazily upward, its earthy aroma blending with the crisp, clean scent of the altiplano air. In these sunken courtyards, the priests perform their duties with a quiet intensity, their movements deliberate and fluid. One might kneel before a central monolith, its surface etched with intricate carvings of mythical creatures and geometric patterns that hint at astronomical knowledge far ahead of its time. The cold stone altar, smoothed by centuries of use, feels unyielding under their palms, a tactile anchor to the rituals that unfold. They pour libations of chicha, a fermented maize drink, into shallow basins carved into the floor, the liquid trickling with a soothing splat that resonates in the enclosed space. The priests' ponchos, dyed in muted earth tones of ochre and gray, sway gently as they raise their arms, tracing arcs that mirror the path of the sun across the sky. There is a subtle wit in their practiced motions, a knowing nod to the mysteries they serve, as if the rituals themselves are a gentle jest played upon the unyielding forces of nature. Purposes of these sunken temples remain a source of wonder, drawn from the careful excavations of Tiwanaku's archaeological sites. Based on reports from scholars like those from the Universidad Admir de San Andrés and the Centro de Investigaciones Arqueológicas de Tiwanaku, these structures likely served as multifaceted centers for religious and ceremonial activities. Positioned below ground, they may have symbolized a connection to the underworld or the fertile depths from which life springs, a concept echoed in the site's irrigation systems that sustain the surrounding fields. The temples were not mere monuments, but active hubs where the elite and the spiritual leaders converge to perform rites that align human endeavors with cosmic cycles. For instance, the alignment of certain stones with solstices suggests they functioned as observatories, guiding agricultural practices in a land where the seasons could be unforgiving. Yet, amid this serene tableau, mysteries linger like shadows at dusk. Why were the temples deliberately sunken? Archaeological evidence, such as the semi-subterranean temple uncovered in the 1950s, reveals that these designs were intentional, possibly to create a more intimate, enclosed space for rituals or to protect against the strong winds that sweep across the altiplano. The cold stone floors, perpetually damp from underground seepage, might have evoked a sense of the sacred waters that nourished the region, drawing parallels to the life-giving lakes and rivers nearby. But the unknowns persist. What exact deities did these priests invoke with their echoing chants? Reports from digs, including those by the Bolivian Institute of Archaeology, hint at offerings of shells and minerals from distant coasts, suggesting trade networks that stretched far beyond the Andes. Yet the full extent of these exchanges remains elusive. As the rituals progress, the sensory details envelop the scene in a lullaby of tranquility. The priest's chants grow softer, blending with the distant call of a condor soaring overhead, its wings cutting through the air with a whisper. The cold stone walls, etched with faded petroglyphs, seem to absorb the sound, creating a cocoon of calm that muffles the outside world. One can almost feel the texture of the ponchos, rough yet comforting, as the priests pause to share a moment of silent reflection, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of small oil lamps that cast a warm, golden glow. The lamps' flames dance lazily, their scent of burning fat a subtle reminder of the resources that sustained this civilization. Historical accounts, pieced together from artifacts like the famous Gateway of the Sun and the Acapana Pyramid, indicate that Tiwanaku's society was highly organized, with the temples at its spiritual core. These structures likely played a role in maintaining social cohesion, where rituals reinforced the hierarchy and ensured communal harmony. Yet, the mystery deepens when considering the decline. Did environmental shifts, such as prolonged droughts evidenced in pollen records from Lake Titicaca, lead to the abandonment of these sites? Or were internal conflicts, subtly inferred from defensive features in other parts of the site, a factor? The sunken temples, with their enduring silence, offer no clear answers, only a detached narrative of consequences, populations dispersing, the once vibrant courtyards falling into disuse, the cold stone left to the elements. Through it all, the scene retains a sleep-friendly serenity, a gentle unfolding of history that invites reflection rather than alarm. The priests, in their unassuming ponchos, embody a subtle wit in their devotion, as if acknowledging the impermanence of their efforts against the vast Andean landscape. One might envision the soft patter of rain on the stones, a soothing rhythm that washes over the rituals, mingling with the echoing chants to create a symphony of natural harmony. As the sun climbs higher, casting a warm veil over the courtyards, the priests conclude their observances, their voices fading into the expansive sky. The mysteries of Tiwanaku's sunken temples, with their blend of known history and elusive truths, linger like a fading dream, beckoning the curious to ponder what lies beneath. And as this tale draws to a close, one feels the pull toward new horizons, where other ancient echoes await their turn to be explored. In the fading light of a highland evening, where the Andes cradled the ancient city of Tiwanaku, a noble's residence stood as a silent sentinel of stone and shadow. Walls hewn from massive blocks that fit together like whispers in the wind, enclosed a world of quiet splendor, far removed from the rugged plains below. Here, in the first millennium of the Common Era, the elite of Tiwanaku moved through their days with a grace born of privilege, their lives woven as finely as the textiles that draped their forms. The air carried the soft scent of burning incense and roasting tubers, a gentle haze that softened the edges of reality, inviting one to linger in the warmth of bygone opulence. The nobles themselves were figures of understated majesty, their bodies cloaked in ponchos of alpaca wool, dyed in hues of deep crimson and earthy gold. These garments, spun from the softest fibers gathered from herds tended by unseen hands, fell in gentle folds that whispered against the stone floors with each measured step. In the great hall, where polished slabs of andesite formed a vast table under the gaze of carved reliefs, they gathered for the evening meal. The fire in the central hearth crackled softly, its flames dancing like fireflies in the dim light, casting a golden glow that played across the faces of those assembled. The warmth seeped into the air, carrying with it the faint, comforting aroma of smoldering wood and spices, a subtle reminder of the earth's bounty claimed for their exclusive delight. One might imagine a noblewoman, her dark hair adorned with beads of polished shell, settling onto a low bench cushioned with layers of finely woven textiles. Her poncho, embroidered with intricate geometric patterns that spoke of celestial alignments and ancestral stories, brushed against the cool stone as she reached for a vessel of chicha. The fermented maize drink flowed smoothly, its mild tang blending with the sweetness of honeyed fruits, a taste that lingered like a quiet melody on the tongue. Around her, the men of the household, their ponchos equally resplendent, conversed in low tones, their words flowing like the gentle stream that fed the residence's private garden. There was no haste in their exchanges, only the unhurried rhythm of those who commanded time itself, their voices a soft counterpoint to the occasional pop of the fire. The hall itself was a testament to Tiwanaku's mastery, its walls lined with niches that once held vessels of burnished gold and ceramic effigies glazed in vibrant blues and reds. Excavations from sites like the Acapana Pyramid reveal how such spaces were designed not merely for living, but for displaying the fruits of imperial reach. Here in this residence, the air was thick with the history of conquests and trade routes that stretched across the Altiplano, bringing exotic stones and metals to adorn the noble's domain. A faint draft might carry the scent of wild herbs from the nearby courtyards, where plots of quinoa and potatoes grew in terraced beds, their leaves rustling gently in the evening breeze. The nobles dined on platters of steamed fish from distant lakes, seasoned with salts from evaporated ponds, each bite a sensory echo of the empire's vast expanse. As twilight deepened, the fire's glow illuminated the finer details. The smooth texture of a ceramic goblet under fingertips, cool and reassuring. The subtle sheen of a silver ornament reflecting the flames. The distant hum of a flute played by a musician in the shadows, its notes weaving through the air like threads of a dream. There was a wit in this life, A quiet irony in how the nobles, so removed from the labor that sustained them, found amusement in the patterns of their textiles, each motif a clever nod to the stars that guided their ancestors. One might chuckle softly at the way a particularly elaborate design mimicked the constellation of the Pleiades, as if the heavens themselves had been tamed for their evening wear. Yet, beyond the immediate comforts, there lingered an undercurrent of mystery, a whisper of treasures long vanished from these halls. Reports from excavations at Tiwanaku, such as those conducted in the late 20th century, speak of caches of gold ornaments and ceremonial knives that once graced such residences, only to disappear into the mists of time. Perhaps they were spirited away during the upheavals that marked the empire's decline, or buried in secret rites that even now elude full understanding. In the quiet hours, as the fire dimmed to embers, a noble might pause, his hand resting on a vacant niche, and ponder the absence. The air grew heavier then, carrying a faint, elusive scent of earth and age, as if the stones themselves held memories of what was lost. It was not a tale of violence or loss, but a gentle enigma, a puzzle wrapped in the folds of history, inviting contemplation rather than alarm. The routines of the day unfolded with a similar serenity. Mornings began with the soft light filtering through narrow windows, illuminating chambers where nobles prepared for their roles. A woman might anoint herself with oils derived from mountain flowers, their delicate fragrance mingling with the wool of her poncho, creating a cocoon of calm. In another room, advisors pored over knotted quipus strings encoded with records of tribute and trade their fingers, tracing the chords with the precision of a weaver. The space was filled with the subtle sounds of daily life, the gentle clink of stone tools shaping a new artifact, the whisper of breath as one admired a polished obsidian mirror. Each element spoke of an opulence that was not gaudy, but refined, drawn from the very essence of the land. Evenings often returned to the hall, where the dining continued with a languid pace. The nobles reclined on benches padded with alpaca fleece, its warmth seeping into their bones like a mother's embrace. Dishes of savory stews, simmered with herbs from the high valleys, released aromas that danced in the air, evoking the vast landscapes beyond. There was a subtle wit in their gatherings, a light-hearted banter about the latest tribute arrivals, perhaps a jest about how a particularly fine textile outshone the stars. Yet, through it all, the mystery of the lost treasures wove its way into the narrative, a faint shadow that added depth without disrupting the calm. Excavation findings, like those from the Pimapunku complex, suggest that such items were not merely decorative but held spiritual significance, perhaps keys to rituals now forgotten. One could almost feel the weight of that absence, a cool breeze through the hall that carried hints of what might have been. As the night progressed, the fire's crackle softened to a murmur, and the nobles drifted to their private quarters. There, in rooms lined with tapestries that depicted mythical beasts and cosmic events, they found repose on beds of stuffed cushions, the air heavy with the scent of night-blooming flowers wafting from the courtyards. The opulence was ever present, a gentle reminder of their place in the world, yet tempered by that enduring enigma. What had become of the golden idols and jeweled ornaments that once filled these spaces? The question lingered like a half-remembered dream, a mystery that excavation reports only partially unravel, leaving room for the imagination to wander. In this way, life in a Tiwanaku noble's residence was a tapestry of sensory indulgence and quiet reflection, a realm where the crackling fire and the soft wool of a poncho spoke louder than words. As the stars wheeled overhead, casting their light through the stone apertures, one couldn't help but feel the pull of time's gentle current, carrying us toward the next whisper of history. Perhaps in the morrow's light, other stories would unfold, drawing us further into the folds of the past. As the first light of dawn creeps over the vast Andean plains, a gentle mist rises from the dew-kissed grasses, wrapping the world in a soft, ethereal veil. In the heart of the Tiwanaku realm, where the high plateau stretches endlessly under the watchful gaze of distant snow-capped peaks, a group of herders stirs from their simple shelters. Clad in woven ponchos of deep earth tones, the fibers rough yet comforting against the skin, they step out into the chilly air that nips at their cheeks like a playful whisper. These guardians of the llamas, descendants of ancient traditions from the first millennium C, begin their day with the quiet rhythm of routine, a dance as old as the winds that sweep across the altiplano. The herders, men and women alike, move with a purposeful grace, their feet crunching softly on the frost-crusted earth, each step releasing the faint, herbal scent of crushed eku grass. They gather their charges, the llamas with their long, elegant necks and curious eyes, from the communal pens where the animals have spent the night huddled for warmth. A soft clinking arises as the herders attach simple leather leads, adorned with beads that catch the morning light, to the llama's halters. The air carries a crispness, cool and invigorating, like the first sip of clear mountain stream water, urging the group forward into the golden haze of sunrise. Guiding their flocks across the undulating plains, the herders walk in a loose formation, their ponchos fluttering lightly in the breeze that carries hints of wild herbs and distant wildflowers. The llamas plod along, their padded feet sinking slightly into the soil, leaving faint trails that weave through the landscape like threads in a tapestry. One herder, perhaps the eldest among them, hums a low melodic tune, a subtle wit in its rhythm that pokes fun at the stubbornness of a particularly wayward llama who pauses to nibble a clump of sweet, dew-dampened grass. The sound blends with the gentle rustle of the wind and the occasional soft grunt from the animals, creating a symphony that soothes the soul, as if the plains themselves are breathing in harmony. By mid-morning, the sun climbs higher, warming the air just enough to melt the remnants of frost, and the herders find a suitable grazing spot amid the rolling hills. Here, the grass grows in tufted patches, its blades whispering against one another in the light wind, a sound like distant waves lapping at the shore. The herders settle into their tasks with meticulous care, drawing from knowledge passed down through generations, as revealed in the archaeological remnants of Tiwanaku sites like the Pumapunku ruins. They spread out, ensuring the llamas have access to the best fodder, their eyes scanning the horizon for signs of predators or changing weather. One might kneel to inspect a llama's hoof, feeling the warm, leathery texture under their fingers, while another unwraps a small bundle of dried quinoa cakes, the earthy aroma rising as they break it apart for a simple meal. The midday hours unfold in a tranquil haze, the sun's rays casting a golden glow over the plains, where the air shimmers with heat. The herders rest in the shade of a rocky outcrop, its surface smooth and cool to the touch, like polished stone from the ancient quarries near Lake Titicaca. They share stories in hushed voices, their words laced with a subtle wit that turns the challenges of herding into light-hearted tales, perhaps joking about how a llama's unpredictable moods mirror the fickle mountain winds. Sensory details abound, the faint, salty tang on their lips from the high-altitude air, the satisfying crunch of fresh grass underfoot as they shift positions, and the distant bleat of a young cria calling for its mother, a sound that tugs at the heart like a gentle lullaby. As the afternoon wanes, the herders resume their guidance, coaxing the llamas along well-trodden paths that archaeologists have traced through the patterns of ancient droppings and worn trails in Tiwanaku artifacts. The animals move with a steady gait, their soft footfalls creating a rhythmic percussion against the ground, while the herders' ponchos sway like silent flags in the breeze. The air grows cooler again, carrying the fresh, pine-like scent of highland shrubs, and the herders pause to let the llamas drink from a small stream, its water bubbling over smooth stones with a sound as calming as a whispered secret. In these moments, the mystery of unrecorded schedules lingers like a shadow on the plains, a puzzle pieced together from the silence of the past. Tiwanaku's archaeological reports, such as those from excavations at the site's residential areas, hint at seasonal migrations and daily patterns through the distribution of animal bones and tools. Yet the exact cadence of these herders' days remains elusive, a quiet enigma that adds a layer of wonder to their world. Evening approaches with a gradual softening of light, the sky painted in hues of deepening blue and purple, as if the heavens themselves are drawing a curtain over the day. The herders guide their flocks back toward the settlements, the path illuminated by the fading glow and the occasional spark from a flint struck against stone. The air cools further, wrapping around them like a familiar blanket, and the grasses release a final whisper as the llamas settle for the night. One herder might linger a moment longer, gazing at the stars emerging overhead, their twinkling lights reflecting in the animals' eyes, pondering the unseen forces that govern their ancestors' lives. Subtle wit creeps in, as they muse on how the unrecorded schedules of old might have been as unpredictable as a sudden altiplano storm, leaving even the most diligent herder to adapt with a knowing smile. Throughout the day, the herders' routines are a testament to the resilience of Tiwanaku society, as evidenced by the artifacts unearthed at sites like Lukurmata, where spindle whorls and weaving tools speak of the intricate balance between human and animal. They mend a torn lead with deft hands, the rough wool of their ponchos brushing against their skin, or they pause to admire the vibrant colors of the landscape, the earthy browns of the soil, the silvery shimmer of distant lakes, and the deep green of resilient plants that thrive in the thin air. The sensory tapestry weaves deeper, the metallic taste of altitude on the tongue, the warm breath of a llama nuzzling a hand, and the faint, rhythmic hum of insects in the undergrowth, all contributing to a scene of serene continuity. As dusk envelops the plains, the herders return to their hearths, the fire's gentle crackle providing a comforting counterpoint to the day's end. They share a meal of boiled tubers and dried meat, the flavors simple yet satisfying, evoking the earth's bounty. The mystery of those unrecorded schedules persists, a subtle thread in the fabric of their lives, as if the winds themselves carry whispers of forgotten timetables, known only to the stars above. Yet in this calming rhythm, there is peace, a lullaby for the weary soul, reminding all that some secrets of the past are meant to soothe rather than solve. And so, as the night deepens and the plains fall into silence, the herder's day fades into memory, a cycle as enduring as the mountains. What mysteries might the morrow unveil in the lives of those who came before, in the echoes of Tiwanaku's herding traditions? Perhaps the next tale will reveal more, drawing us further into the heart of this ancient world. In the high Andean plateau, where the sun rose like a gentle ember over the ancient stones of Tiwanaku, the herders moved with the quiet rhythm of the wind-swept grasses. It was the first millennium sea, a time when the world turned slowly under vast skies, and the people of this land had long mastered the art of living alongside their woolly companions. Dressed in woven ponchos of earthy hue, soft alpaca fibers that whispered against the breeze, these men and women guided young llamas along narrow trails that wound through the rugged terrain. Their steps were deliberate, almost meditative, as if each one carried the weight of centuries of unspoken knowledge. The air held a crisp chill at dawn, carrying the faint scent of dew-kissed iku grass and the distant aroma of wild herbs that clung to the mountainsides. Herders like old Amak, with his weathered face and steady gaze, would select a spirited llama calf from the herd, its coat a mix of soft grays and whites that shimmered in the morning light. The calf's ears twitched at the soft bleats of its kin, a gentle chorus that echoed through the valleys, reminding all who listened of the deep bond between human and animal. Amak's hand, calloused from years of tending these creatures, rested lightly on the llama's back, guiding it with a touch as subtle as a breath of wind. Training began not with force, but with patience, a dance of mutual understanding that archaeologists have pieced together from scattered clues in the ruins of Tiwanaku. Fragments of pottery and stone carvings depict llamas in procession, their forms etched with the same care as the monumental gateways that still stand as silent witnesses. These artifacts suggest that herders employed methods rooted in observation and reward, using the natural instincts of the llamas to foster trust. A herder might offer a handful of tender tola leaves, their fresh, minty tang drawing the animal closer, while murmuring low, soothing words in the ancient Aymara tongue. The llamas responded with soft, rhythmic hums, vibrations that seemed to resonate with the very earth beneath their feet. As the day warmed, the trails grew dusty, a fine powder rising with each step and settling on the herders' ponchos like a second skin. The path twisted upward, past clusters of cacti with their spiny arms reaching toward the sky, their subtle sweetness mingling with the earthy scent of the soil. Here, Amak would pause to teach the young llama to navigate the uneven ground, encouraging it with a gentle tug on a simple rope fashioned from braided fibers. No harsh commands disrupted the calm. Instead, the herder's wit shone through in quiet moments, like when he chuckled softly at a llama's stubborn halt, as if sharing a private joke with the creature. "You think you're the king of these hills, don't you?" he might whisper, his voice a lullaby carried away by the wind. The mystery of these training methods lingers like a shadow in the afternoon light, for no written records from Tiwanaku reveal the exact secrets passed from one generation to the next. Archaeologists, sifting through the remains of ancient corrals and burial sites, have uncovered llama bones adorned with offerings, hinting at rituals that intertwine training with spiritual reverence. Perhaps the herders whispered incantations to the mountain deities, invoking the spirits to bless their efforts, though the details remain elusive, lost to the winds of time. This enigma adds a layer of wonder to the scene, a subtle reminder that some knowledge flows not through scrolls, but through the veins of the land itself. By midday, the sun cast a golden haze over the plateau, warming the herder's skin and drawing out the rich, musky odor of the llama's wool. The animals moved in a loose line, their padded feet creating a soft, thudding rhythm on the packed earth paths, each step a testament to the herder's skill. Amak demonstrated how to encourage a llama to carry a light load, perhaps a bundle of woven goods or tools, starting with something as simple as a sack of dried quinoa kernels. The grain's nutty aroma filled the air as it shifted in the pack, a sensory cue that rewarded the animal's compliance. The herder's ponchos billowed slightly in the breeze, their patterns intricate geometrics, inspired by the stars above serving as a visual echo of the cosmos that guided their lives. In these moments, the training felt like a conversation, a back and forth of gestures and responses that built an unbreakable bond. A young herder, perhaps Amak's apprentice, watched closely, her eyes tracing the way the llama's long neck arched in curiosity. She learned to read the animal's body language, noting the slight flick of an ear or the way its tail swished lazily, signals that spoke volumes without words. The The air was alive with subtle sounds, the crunch of gravel underfoot, the distant call of a condor soaring overhead, and the occasional contented sigh from a well-trained beast. These details, preserved in the memories of the land, offer glimpses into a practice that was both practical and poetic. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, the herders led their charges to a sheltered valley, where the grass grew lush and green, dotted with tiny yellow flowers that released a sweet, floral scent when brushed against. Here, they rested, allowing the llamas to graze freely, their soft bleats blending with the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Amek sat on a smooth boulder, worn by centuries of similar pauses, and shared stories with his apprentice tales of how their ancestors might have discovered these methods through trial and error, adapting to the harsh Andean environment. There was a subtle wit in his words, a light-hearted acknowledgement of the llama's occasional mischief, like when one would playfully nudge a herder for an extra treat, its warm breath tickling the air. Yet, the unrecorded nature of these techniques weaves an intriguing mystery through the narrative of Tiwanaku's herding culture. Excavations at sites like Poncho have revealed elaborate stone carvings of llamas in various poses, suggesting advanced social structures around animal husbandry. But the specifics elude us. Did the herders use specific calls echoed across the valleys to signal commands? Or perhaps they relied on the llama's herd instincts, fostering leadership within the group? These questions linger, a gentle puzzle that invites contemplation, much like the way a herder might ponder the stars at dusk. As evening approached, the light softened to a warm amber, casting long shadows across the trails. The herders guided their trained llamas back toward the settlement, the animals moving with newfound confidence, their steps synchronized with the fading rhythm of the day. The air cooled, carrying the faint, comforting scent of wood smoke from distant hearths, a promise of rest after a day of quiet labor. In this calming tableau, the bond between human and llama stood as a testament to the ingenuity of the Tiwanaku people, their methods a harmonious blend of necessity and art. This scene, drawn from the echoes of archaeological finds, hints at a deeper continuity, where the mysteries of the past flow into the present like a gentle stream. As the herders and their companions disappear into the twilight, one can't help but wonder what other secrets the Andes hold, waiting to be uncovered in the segments yet to come. In the high Andean plateaus where the wind whispers secrets through the ancient grasses, a group of herders gathered under the vast, unblinking sky of first millennium's Tiwanaku. Clad in simple ponchos woven from the earth's own gifts, these men and women moved with the quiet rhythm of the seasons, their lives intertwined with the sturdy llamas that roamed the camps. The air carried a faint chill, softened by the golden light of midday, as the herders prepared for the task that had sustained their people for generations, the careful harvest of wool. The llamas stood patiently, their thick coats shimmering like fields of ripened grain under the sun's gentle caress. Each animal was led to a low stone outcrop, a natural bench worn smooth by years of use, where a herder knelt with steady hands. The shears, simple tools of bronze-tipped edges honed to perfection, glinted dully in the light. As the first snip echoed softly through the camp, it was like the whisper of a distant stream, crisp yet unhurried, breaking the silence with a sound that spoke of renewal. Wool dust rose in lazy clouds, fine particles dancing in the air like specks of forgotten dreams, settling on the herders' ponchos and lending a faint, earthy scent to the breeze. One might have smiled at the way the llamas blinked impassively, as if sharing a subtle jest with their handlers, their long eyelashes fluttering like silent guardians against the tickle of the shears. The process unfolded with a soothing cadence, each stroke deliberate and kind. The herders worked in pairs, one holding the llama's fleece with fingers calloused yet tender, the other guiding the shears in smooth, arching motions. The wool came away in soft bundles, warm and yielding, carrying the faint musk of the animal mixed with the crisp alpine air. Imagine the gentle tug as fibers parted, a sensation like drawing a comb through silken threads, accompanied by the soft rustle of fleece piling at their feet. The camp itself was a tapestry of simple life, low tents of woven reeds humming with the occasional bleat, the distant call of birds weaving through the sounds like a lullaby. In these moments, the herders paused briefly, their breaths steady, appreciating the wool's natural hues from the creamy whites to the deep, earthy browns, as if each lock held a story of the mountain's ancient embrace. Once the shearing was complete, the real artistry began, a dance of transformation that turned raw fleece into threads of enduring beauty. The herders gathered the wool into large, hand-woven baskets, their edges frayed from seasons past, and carried them to the edge of a clear, meandering stream. There, under the shade of gnarled quinoa trees, they submerged the bundles in the cool, flowing water, the liquid murmuring softly as it washed away the dust and oils. The sensory delight was palpable, the wool's damp weight in their hands slick and cool, the fresh, clean aroma rising like mist from the stream, the subtle splash as they kneaded the fibers, their movements rhythmic and almost meditative. One could almost hear the water's gentle laughter, as if it too were part of the ritual, cleansing not just the wool but the herders' spirits in the process. With the wool now clean and glistening, the herders spread it out on flat rocks warmed by the sun, allowing the heat to dry it slowly. The air filled with a warm, woolly fragrance, reminiscent of sun-baked earth and wild herbs, while the fibers fluffed up like clouds dispersing after a storm. Then came the carding, a task performed with wooden tools shaped like wide-toothed combs, their surfaces smoothed by generations of use. Seated in a circle around a central fire, its flames flickering low and inviting, the herders drew the wool through the teeth, the soft scraping sound blending with the crackle of burning wood. Each pull aligned the fibers, creating a fluffy mass that begged to be spun, and one might catch a whiff of the smoky undertone mingling with the wool's natural scent, a subtle reminder of the camp's communal warmth. Spinning followed naturally, as if the wool itself yearned for form. The herders, often the elder women with their knowing eyes and steady hands, sat cross-legged on padded hides, their spindles whirling with graceful spins. The spindle, a simple wooden rod weighted at one end, twirled effortlessly, drawing the carded wool into long, even threads. The sound was a soft whir, like the wind through high grasses, punctuated by the occasional click as the thread wound around the rod. Sensory details abounded. The slight resistance of the fibers under their fingers, the warmth of the spindle growing familiar in their palms, the faint itch of loose wool against their skin. In these quiet hours, a subtle wit emerged in their conversations, light murmurs about how the llamas seemed to grow their coats, just to keep the herders busy, a gentle tease that softened the labor's repetition. As the threads accumulated, the herders moved to weaving, the pinnacle of their craft. On simple looms fashioned from sturdy branches and cords, they interlaced the yarns with precision, the shuttle passing back and forth like a bird in flight. The rhythmic clack of the loom was almost musical, a steady beat that harmonized with the camp's ambient sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant bleat of a llama. The woven fabrics took shape slowly, their patterns emerging as intricate designs inspired by the Tiwanaku world, geometric motifs that echoed the stars above or the jagged peaks around them. Archaeological finds from Tiwanaku sites, like the finely preserved textiles unearthed near Lake Titicaca, reveal the mastery of these weavers, with fibers dyed in natural hues using roots and minerals. A deep red from cochineal insects, a soft blue from indigo plants, the colors bled into the wool like memories, each thread a testament to their resourcefulness. Yet, amid this harmonious process, a quiet mystery lingers, like a shadow in the corner of a well-lit room. The ancient Tiwanaku herders possessed techniques that have slipped through the fingers of time, methods of processing wool that modern eyes can only glimpse through fragments. Perhaps it was in the way they treated the fibers with secret infusions from highland plants, enhancing strength and sheen in ways archaeology has yet to fully decipher. Whispers of these lost arts surface in the delicate weaves found in burial sites, where textiles show an inexplicable resilience, fibers intertwined with such finesse that they outlasted stone. One ponders, in a detached curiosity, how these innovations faded, perhaps carried away by winds of change or buried with the herders themselves. It's a gentle enigma, not one of tragedy but of wonder, inviting reflection on the impermanence of knowledge, much like the wool that once warmed their bodies now warms the soil. Through it all, the herders' days wove together like the threads they created, a cycle of labor laced with tranquility. As evening descended, casting long shadows across the camp, they admired their work. Bolts of fabric ready for ponchos, blankets, and ceremonial garments, each piece the echo of their enduring bond with the land. The mystery of those vanished techniques added a layer of allure, a subtle reminder that some stories remain untold, waiting for the curious to unravel them. And so, as the stars began to twinkle like distant spindles in the night sky, the herders settled into their tents, the soft rustle of woolen blankets pulling them toward rest. Yet beyond this peaceful scene, the world of Tiwanaku held more tales, waiting to unfold in the morrow's light. In the fading light of the Andean highlands, where the vast altiplano stretched like a silent sea under the first stars of evening, a group of herders gathered around a modest fire. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of dew settling on the grasses, and the distant peaks of the Cordillera stood as eternal guardians. These were the people of Tiwanaku, their lives woven into the rhythms of the first millennium's world, where herds of llamas and alpacas roamed the slopes, and community was the thread that bound them through unseen ties. The herders, draped in simple ponchos, of coarse wool dyed in earthy tones of ochre and deep green, moved with a quiet grace that spoke of years spent in harmony with the land. Each poncho, hand-woven from the fleece of their flocks, hung loosely over their shoulders, offering warmth against the chill that crept in with the night. As they settled around the fire, the flames danced low and steady, casting a golden glow that softened the lines of their weathered faces. There was no rush in their movements, no urgency in their words. Instead, a gentle cadence unfolded, like the steady flow of a mountain stream. One by one, they drew forth simple provisions from woven baskets, the kind passed down through generations. Fresh maize cobs, harvested from terraced fields far below, sizzled softly on flat stones heated by the embers, their kernels popping with a whisper that mingled with the crackle of burning llama dung. The aroma rose like a warm embrace, earthy and sweet, laced with the subtle smokiness of the fire, drawing the group closer. A herder, his hands calloused from years of tending animals, reached for a cob, turning it slowly as the steam curled upward, carrying hints of charred sweetness that made the mouth water in anticipation. As the maize cooked, others contributed to the shared meal. One woman, her poncho adorned with faint patterns of ancient motifs, unwrapped a bundle of dried potatoes, their starchy scent evoking memories of the harvest moons. She placed them near the flames, where they roasted gently, releasing a nutty fragrance that wove through the air. Soft laughter bubbled up then, not the boisterous kind that echoes off cliffs, but a murmur of contentment, like the rustle of wind through high grasses. It was in these moments that the bonds of their community revealed themselves, not through grand declarations, but in the quiet exchange of a shared glance or the offering of a morsel. "Another good day with the herds," one man said, his voice a low rumble that carried a hint of wry amusement, as if he were sharing a private joke with the stars. He passed a steaming cob to his neighbor, who nodded in silent thanks, their fingers brushing briefly in a gesture as old as the paths they trod. These interactions, simple yet profound, formed the invisible threads of their social fabric, strengthened by the mutual reliance on one another's knowledge and labor. In Tiwanaku's society, as reflected in the scattered remnants of their social records, fragments of pottery and stone carvings that hint at communal rituals, herders like these were the backbone, their lives intertwined with the cycles of migration and grazing that sustained the larger polity. The fire's warmth seeped into their bones, and as they ate, the flavors unfolded layer by layer. The maize, slightly charred on the edges, offered a comforting crunch followed by a burst of creamy sweetness, while the potatoes, softened by the heat, yielded a hearty, earthy taste that lingered on the tongue. Conversations drifted like smoke, touching on the day's observations, the way a young llama had finally learned to follow the flock, or how the clouds had gathered in patterns that foretold rain. There was a subtle wit in their words, a gentle teasing that lightened the air without sharp edges, as when one herder remarked on another's knack for finding the plumpest tubers, drawing a soft chuckle that faded into the night. Yet beneath the serene gathering lay the mystery of unwritten friendships, those intangible connections that history has preserved only in echoes. In the absence of scrolls or inscriptions from Tiwanaku's herding communities, unlike the more formalized records of elite ceremonies, archaeologists have pieced together these bonds from the subtle clues left in the landscape. Shared hearths, like the one they sat around now, appear in excavations as circular arrangements of stones, suggesting spaces where people convened not just for sustenance, but for the forging of alliances that went unrecorded. These friendships, born of necessity and affection, were as elusive as the mist that cloaked the mountains at dawn, their depth inferred from the way herds were collectively managed, with families rotating responsibilities across vast pastures. One might imagine, in the quiet spaces between their words, how a herder from one clan would recall a favor from another, a debt of kindness repaid not with words, but with the loan of an extra animal or aid in a storm. As the meal progressed, the sensory world around them deepened. The fire's glow painted their ponchos in hues of amber and shadow, the wool's soft texture a comforting weight against the cooling air. A faint breeze carried the scent of wild herbs from the nearby slopes, mingling with the lingering aroma of the food, while the soft padding of a llama's feet in the distance added a rhythmic undercurrent to their gathering. In these details, one could sense the wit of survival, the clever adaptations that allowed Tiwanaku herders to thrive in a harsh environment, selecting the hardiest animals, reading the subtlest signs in the weather, all while nurturing bonds that historians now view with a mix of admiration and intrigue. For in the first millennium CE, as Tiwanaku's influence spread across the southern Andes, these community ties were not merely social niceties, but vital networks that ensured resilience. Social records, such as those inferred from the arrangement of habitation sites and the distribution of ceramic styles, indicate that herders formed loose confederations, where knowledge of grazing routes and water sources was shared orally, passed from elder to youth like a whispered secret. The mystery deepened in the way these friendships transcended individual lifetimes, evident in the communal burials that, while not the focus here, hint at lasting loyalties. One could ponder, in a detached reflection, how such unwritten pacts, whether the uncertainties of the era droughts that parched the land or raids that tested resolve, leaving behind only the faint impressions in the earth for us to decipher. As the fire began to dim, the herders lingered, their voices fading to murmurs. One woman hummed a tuneless melody, her song a lullaby to the night, evoking the soft laughter that had filled the air earlier. The maize savory remnants cooled on their tongues, and the ponchos rustled gently as they shifted, drawing closer for warmth. In this moment, the bonds were palpable, a tapestry woven from shared meals and silent understandings, far removed from the structured routines of daily labor or the distant abodes of authority. And so, as the stars wheeled overhead, one might feel the pull toward broader horizons, where the threads of these highland communities intertwined with the greater story of Tiwanaku's legacy. Yet for now, in the calm embrace of the fire's glow, the mystery of those unwritten friendships lingered like a gentle fog, inviting reflection on the enduring power of human connection. Perhaps in time, the next tale would unfold, carrying the listener further into the weave of history. In the high Andean plateaus where the wind whispers secrets through the grass, the herders of Tiwanaku gathered as the first light of dawn softened the ancient stones. It was the first millennium sea, a time when the world balanced on the edge of the divine and the earthly, and these sturdy folk, wrapped in the warm embrace of woven ponchos, turned their faces to the sky. Their rituals, drawn from the depths of Tiwanaku's temple records, unfolded with a quiet reverence, a dance of offerings that spoke to unseen deities, presiding over flocks and fields. The herders moved with the grace of the llamas they tended, their ponchos dyed in earthy hues of ochre and deep russet, fluttering gently like the wings of high-flying birds. They approached the stone altars, simple yet sacred platforms etched with faint carvings that hinted at celestial beings, perhaps the mountain spirits or the water gods who ensured the rivers flowed and the rains came. In their hands they carried bundles of sacred leaves and small clay vessels, the air already tinged with the sweet, smoky wisps of incense rising from smoldering braziers. The scent was subtle, like the memory of a distant fire, wrapping around the senses in a comforting veil that eased the soul into contemplation. Soft chants began, low and rhythmic, carried on the breath of the wind. The herders' voices blended into a harmonious murmur, not loud enough to startle the grazing animals nearby, but persistent like the steady pulse of the earth itself. Oh, guardians of the heights, they might have intoned, their words drawn from oral traditions echoed in the temple inscriptions. Accept these gifts from our humble hands. Each chant was a thread in an invisible tapestry, weaving gratitude for the health of their herds and the fertility of the land. The sound was soothing, a lullaby that could lull even the most restless spirit, with a subtle wit in its repetition, as if the deities themselves might chuckle at the herders' persistent pleas, knowing the cycles of life turned regardless. At the altars, the offerings took shape with deliberate care. A herder would kneel, the cool stone pressing against their knees through the thick wool of their poncho, and place a handful of roasted grains or a tuft of freshly shorn wool. These were not grand sacrifices, as the temple records attest, but intimate gestures of exchange, acknowledging the deity's role in the herder's daily survival. The air grew heavy with the aroma of the incense, a blend of aromatic herbs gathered from the slopes, juniper and wild mint, their fragrances mingling to create a serene atmosphere that seemed to hush the world around. One could almost feel the warmth of the rising sun on their skin, a gentle caress that mirrored the tenderness of the ritual. As the offerings were laid, the herders would pause, their eyes half closed in meditation, allowing the moment to unfold. The temple records, preserved on weathered stones, speak of these practices as a form of communion, with a boundary between human and divine blurred. Yet, there was always an element of mystery to these unwritten rituals, those aspects not etched into stone, but passed in hushed whispers under the stars. Perhaps a herder would trace an unseen pattern in the air with their fingers, a gesture lost to time, evoking a power that no record could capture. It lent an air of enchantment, a subtle puzzle that invited wonder without demanding answers, as if the rituals held secrets meant only for the wind to know. The scene was alive with sensory details that painted the ritual in soft strokes. The soft rustle of ponchos against the grass created a gentle symphony, accompanied by the distant bleat of a llama, its call echoing like a question to the deities above. The herders' faces, weathered by sun and wind, reflected a calm resolve, their expressions serene as they inhaled the incense's earthy perfume. One might imagine the faint taste of salt on their lips from the highland air, a reminder of the vast lake nearby, though they never ventured to its depths. The rituals progressed with a lullaby-like flow, each step measured and unhurried, fostering a sense of peace that wrapped around the participants like a warm blanket. Historical accounts from Tiwanaku's temples reveal that these practices were deeply rooted in the herder's way of life, dating back to the early centuries of the millennium. Inscriptions describe how, during the harvest moons, the herders would align their altars with the stars, using simple tools like knotted cords to mark the heavens' positions. This celestial harmony added a layer of subtle wit to their devotions, as if the stars themselves were playful guides, twinkling in approval or twinkling in jest at human endeavors. The offerings, too, varied with the seasons. In the dry months, they might present dried herbs and seeds, their colors vibrant against the gray stones, while in the wet season, fresh sprigs of mountain flowers released a dew-like moisture into the air, cooling the senses with their delicate fragrance. Yet, amid this tranquility, there lingered the mystery of the unwritten. The temple records, while detailed in their depictions of public ceremonies, left gaps for the personal. The intimate rites that herders performed alone or in small groups. What unspoken words were murmured over the altars? What hidden symbols were drawn in the dust? This enigma, distinct from the communal ties of other traditions, added a gentle intrigue, like a half-forgotten dream that lingers upon waking. It was as if the herders guarded these secrets, not out of secrecy, but out of reverence, allowing the rituals to evolve with each generation, unwritten yet eternally present. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden glow over the plateaus, the herders would conclude their offerings with a final chant, their voices fading into the breeze like echoes in a vast canyon. The incense smoke curled upward, dissipating into the sky, carrying their petitions to the deities. In these moments, one could sense the subtle wit of the universe, where the herders' simple acts held profound power, a reminder that even in the vastness of the Andes, the smallest gesture could bridge worlds. The rituals ended not with fanfare, but with a quiet retreat, the herders slipping back to their flocks, their ponchos swaying in rhythm with the grass. Throughout the day, the practices continued in subtler forms. A herder might pause by a wayside stone, whispering a brief invocation as they passed, the air filled with the faint scent of crushed leaves underfoot. The temple records note similar devotions, where offerings were made not just at grand altars, but in the everyday landscape, turning the entire plateau into a sacred space. Sensory details abounded. The cool touch of dew on their fingers as they arranged petals, the soft crunch of gravel beneath their sandals, the distant hum of insects that seemed to harmonize with their chants. These elements wove a tapestry of experience, calming and immersive, drawing the observer into a world where time slowed to a gentle crawl. In the evening, as shadows lengthened, the herders gathered once more, their rituals mirroring the day's beginning but with a deeper hush. The air cooled, carrying the lingering aroma of incense that now mingled with the earthy scent of the soil. Chants grew softer, almost imperceptible, like a lullaby easing the world to sleep. The mystery of the unwritten persisted, a quiet undercurrent that made each ritual feel alive and evolving, untouched by the rigidity of written law. Drawing from Tiwanaku's historical legacy, these practices were not mere superstition, but a profound dialogue with the natural order. The herders' offerings, as documented, reflected a balance of respect and reciprocity, ensuring the continuity of their way of life. Yet, in their subtlety, they held a wit that poked gently at the human condition, as if the deities, in their infinite wisdom, appreciated the herders' efforts with a knowing smile. As the last light faded, the herders dispersed, their ponchos blending into the twilight, leaving the altars to the stars. The rituals, with their sensory richness and unspoken mysteries, faded like a dream, paving the way for what comes next in this unfolding tale. In the hushed expanse of the Andean highlands, where the first light of dawn softened the jagged peaks of Tiwanaku, a group of herders gathered in their modest camps. Wrapped in coarse woolen ponchos that whispered against the chill, they moved with the quiet rhythm of the earth itself. The air carried a crisp bite, a reminder of the thin atmosphere at such altitudes, yet it was laced with the soothing aroma of crushed herbs simmering over low flames. These men and women, descendants of ancient ways in the first millennium C, tended to the health of their flocks and themselves with knowledge passed down through whispers of wind and memory. The herders' days, though not dwelt upon in their routines, often led to moments of quiet healing under the vast sky. A woman named Quechua, her poncho draped like a shield against the morning frost, knelt by a stone-ringed fire. She selected bundles of dried leaves munya for its minty warmth, cantuta for its subtle floral notes, crushing them gently between calloused fingers. The steam rose in delicate tendrils, carrying a fragrance that eased the lungs and calmed the spirit. Inhale deeply, and the air transformed from merely cold to invigorating, a gentle veil that wrapped around the senses like a forgotten lullaby. Their practices drew from the deep well of Andean medical traditions, as chronicled in ancient texts like those etched on ceramic vessels and inscribed in the oral histories of the region. Herbs were not mere plants but allies, gathered from the slopes where the sun kissed the soil, for the aches that came from long treks across rocky paths. They brewed infusions of willow-like bark, its bitter tang mingling with the sweetness of honey from wild bees. The herders spoke little as they worked, their voices a soft murmur against the wind, but their hands told stories of resilience. One elder, his face etched with lines like the terraces below, mixed a paste of ground quinoa seeds and aloe-like sap, applying it to a companion's swollen ankle with the precision of a ritual. The cool gel soothed the skin, drawing out the heat of inflammation, while the chilly air nipped at exposed cheeks, a stark contrast that heightened the relief. In these camps, health was a communal art, woven into the fabric of daily survival without encroaching on the rhythms of herding itself. Children watched from the edges, their eyes wide under wool hoods, as the herders demonstrated the use of coca leaves, not for excess, but for their numbing properties against fatigue and pain. A pinch placed on the tongue released a faint, alkaline tingle, blending with the earthy scent of the fire to create a harmony of sensations. The group's leader, a stoic figure, with a poncho faded from years of wind and rain, often recited fragments of old verses, their words a subtle wit that lightened the gravity of their tasks. Even the mountains bow to a well-chosen leaf, he might say with a faint smile, his voice a gentle ripple in the silence. Yet, amid this careful stewardship, a mystery lingered like mist in the valleys, an enigma of lost remedy recipes that had slipped through the fingers of time. Whispers among the herders spoke of ancient formulations, perhaps recorded in the faded pigments of Tiwanaku's stone carvings or carried in the songs of long-gone shamans, that could mend wounds faster than the rising sun. These recipes, elusive as the stars vanishing at dawn, involved rare blends of high-altitude flowers and roots, their exact proportions fading into obscurity. One tale, passed with a knowing nod, described a potion for fever that combined the steam of eucalyptus-like vapors with the essence of a secretive berry, its aroma, a spicy whisper that once quelled the fiercest chills. But the details had eroded, leaving only echoes in the herder's collective memory. Why these knowledge keepers vanished, their secrets unrecorded in the surviving texts, remained a quiet puzzle, a subtle thread of intrigue that wove through their practices without overshadowing the present calm. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden hue over the camps, the herders turned to preventive care, drawing from the wisdom of Andean medical manuscripts that emphasized balance with nature. They created salves from the sap of native trees, its sticky warmth sealing minor cuts and scrapes, while the surrounding air grew crisp with the promise of rain. The scent of wet earth mingled with the herbs, a earthy perfume that evoked the mountain's enduring strength. In moments of repose, they shared tales of how their ancestors, in the heart of Tiwanaku's society, had used these methods to thrive amidst harsh conditions, their practices a testament to adaptation. A young herder, her poncho pulled tight against a sudden gust, ground seeds of chenopodium, releasing a nutty aroma that filled the air and fortified the body against the cold's insidious grip. The chilly air, ever present, played its role in their rituals, cooling fevered brows and invigorating tired muscles. They built small enclosures of stones to trap the warmth of fires, where the steam from herbal brews rose in lazy spirals, carrying notes of citrus and pine that soothed the mind. Here, in the soft glow of embers, the herders found a peace that extended beyond the physical, a harmony that hinted at the spiritual depths of their traditions. Subtle wits surfaced in their exchanges, like when one quipped, "The wind may howl, but a good herb silences it," his words floating lightly over the crackle of flames. Deeper into the day, as shadows lengthened across the plateau, they addressed ailments of the spirit as much as the body. A compress of cool, damp leaves infused with the essence of wild mint and laid gently on the forehead alleviated headaches born of high altitudes, its refreshing chill a counterpoint to the sun's embrace. The herder's knowledge, rooted in texts that described the healing properties of plants, like those in the Inca herbal, ensured that each remedy was precise, avoiding the haphazard and honoring the delicate interplay of elements. Yet, the mystery of the lost recipes persisted, a faint shadow in their stories. Perhaps, they pondered, these forgotten blends held the key to unexplained recoveries in ancient tales, their ingredients now scattered like autumn leaves in the wind. Even in times of greater need, when illness swept through the camps like an unbidden storm, the herders maintained a detached composure, focusing on the outcomes rather than the distress. They prepared tonics from boiled roots, their earthy bitterness tempered by a hint of sweetness, to restore strength and ward off weakness. The steam enveloped those in care, its warm caress contrasting the nip of the air, creating a cocoon of sensory comfort. Through it all, the subtle wit of their culture shone, as one might jest, "Are herbs no more secrets than the stars?" A light-hearted nod to the enigma that bound them to their past. As evening fell, the herders settled around the fire once more, their ponchos rustling softly in the breeze. The herb-scented air grew cooler, carrying the faint whisper of distant peaks, and they reflected on the enduring legacy of their practices. In this tranquil ritual, health became not just a necessity, but a gentle art, a soothing melody in the grand symphony of Andean life. And so, with the night drawing in, thoughts naturally turned to the threads that connect us all, weaving toward new horizons in the story of the Andes. In the high Andean plateaus of Tiwanaku, where the earth rose like a gentle giant cradling the sky, the first light of dawn softened the ancient stones and whispered across the windswept grasses. Here, in the first millennium C, families of herders moved with the rhythm of the land, their lives woven into the vast expanse that stretched toward distant, snow-capped peaks. Among them were the children, small figures in ponchos of coarse wool, their steps light as falling mist as they took up the quiet duties that bound them to the herds. These young ones, barely taller than the young llamas they guided, carried the weight of tradition in their tiny hands, their world alive with the subtle scents of wild herbs and the soft bleating that echoed through the valleys. The children of these herder families learned early the art of companionship with the animals, their roles emerging not from command, but from the natural flow of survival. A boy of perhaps 7 summers, his poncho draped like a cloud over his shoulders, would rise before the sun fully crested the hills, his bare feet pressing into the cool, dew-kissed earth. The ground yielded softly under his weight, a silent partner in his daily wanderings, as he coaxed the young llamas from their resting spots. These creatures, with their long necks and curious eyes, followed him as if he were an extension of the landscape itself, their fleecy coats brushing against his legs in a gentle rhythm that mimicked the heartbeat of the highlands. The air carried the faint, earthy aroma of llama wool mixed with the crisp tang of mountain air, a scent that lingered like a faint memory on the boy's skin. Girls, too, played their part, often in pairs or small groups, their ponchos cinched at the waist with simple cords woven from local fibers. They moved with a grace that seemed innate, guiding the animals along narrow paths that wound through the terraced fields and up toward the sparse pastures. One might hear the soft patter of their footsteps, muffled by the thick, springy grass that carpeted the slopes, each step a careful negotiation with the uneven terrain. The llamas responded to their calls, low, melodic whistles that carried a subtle wit, as if the children were sharing quiet jokes with the beasts. "Come now, little wanderer," a girl might murmur, her voice a lullaby against the wind, her hand extended to touch the animal's warm flank, feeling the rise and fall of its breath like a steady drumbeat. Archaeological traces from Tiwanaku reveal glimpses of these roles, etched into the pottery and stone carvings that have endured through centuries. Fragments uncovered at sites like the Acapana pyramid show children depicted alongside llamas, their figures small and unassuming yet central to the scenes of daily herding. These artifacts suggest that the young ones were not mere helpers but integral guardians, responsible for selecting the healthiest animals for the family's needs. A child might inspect a llama's hooves, his fingers tracing the tough, resilient pads with a tenderness that spoke of learned care, the texture rough yet familiar under his touch. The sound of the herd's movement, a chorus of soft bleats, and the occasional shuffle of hoofs filled the air, a symphony that blended with the distant rush of a mountain stream, its waters cool and inviting as they trickled over smooth stones. Yet there was a mystery to these tasks, one that the winds of time have left unrecorded in the archaeological record. While the pottery and bone tools speak of herding duties, they whisper of other, unseen responsibilities that children might have undertaken, tasks that faded into the shadows of history. Perhaps they tended to the youngest llamas in hidden glens, away from the eyes of adults, fostering bonds that archaeologists can only speculate about. One might imagine a child sitting cross-legged on a bed of soft, sun-warmed moss, whispering secrets to a curious cria, as the animal nuzzled her poncho, its breath warm and ticklish against her cheek. These unchronicled moments carry a subtle intrigue, a gentle puzzle that invites reflection on the unseen threads of family life in Tiwanaku. The children navigated the highlands with an instinct honed by generations, their small ponchos fluttering like flags in the breeze as they led the herds to fresh grazing spots. The wool of their garments, dyed in earthy tones from local plants, carried the faint scent of the dye, subtle notes of crushed herbs and sun-baked earth that mingled with the clean, crisp air. As they walked, the soft rustle of grass underfoot provided a constant, soothing backdrop, punctuated only by the occasional bleat that rose like a question into the vast sky. There was a wit in their interactions, a quiet playfulness. A boy might tease a stubborn llama, with a feather-light touch, coaxing it forward with a chuckle that echoed faintly, as if the mountains themselves were in on the jest. Historical evidence from Tiwanaku excavations, such as the animal remains found in domestic contexts, underscores the precision of these roles. Llama bones, often associated with young herders' activities, indicate that children were tasked with protecting the herds from predators or environmental hazards, their vigilance a quiet form of guardianship. A girl might pause on a ridge, her eyes scanning the horizon for signs of trouble, the wind carrying the distant call of a bird that sounded like a warning. The feel of the sun on her face, warm and reassuring, contrasted with the cool shadow of a passing cloud, reminding her of the ever-changing world around her. These duties demanded patience, a virtue captured in the archaeological record through the careful arrangement of herding tools, like small slings or woven leads, that suggest children's hands shaped them. In the late afternoon, as the light softened into a golden haze, the children would guide the llamas back toward the family enclosures, their paths tracing the contours of the land like threads in a vast tapestry. The air grew cooler then, carrying the faint, sweet aroma of evening flowers blooming in hidden crevices, their petals delicate under the fading sun. One could almost hear the soft sigh of the herd settling down, the llamas' bleats growing quieter, more contented, as if lulled by the children's presence. Yet amid this routine, the mystery persisted, the unrecorded tasks that might have included secret rituals or personal innovations, lost to time, but hinted at in the subtle variations of artifacts. Perhaps a child invented a new way to secure a laid, a clever adaptation that left no trace but improved their daily efforts, a whisper of ingenuity that archaeologists pondered with quiet wonder. As the stars began to emerge, pinpricks of light against the deepening blue, the children returned to their families, their ponchos dusted with the day's adventures. The sensory tapestry of their world, the feel of warm wool, the sound of bleating echoes, the scent of the earth wove together into a calming narrative, one that spoke of resilience and quiet strength. Tiwanaku's archaeological legacy, with its llama figurines and pastoral motifs, affirms the centrality of these roles, yet leaves room for the unknown, a gentle enigma that adds depth to the story. Through it all, the children's contributions formed a vital link in the chain of survival, their small figures embodying the spirit of the Andes, the soft footsteps that marked their paths, the bleats that answered their calls, and the mysteries that lingered in the unrecorded corners of their duties painted a picture of a world both tangible and elusive. And as the night settled over the plateaus, one might feel the transition to other tales, where the echoes of Tiwanaku's legacy continue to unfold. Word count, 1,523. In the hushed expanse of the Andean highlands, where the ancient winds whispered secrets across the vast altiplano, the stone shelters of the Tiwanaku herders stood as silent guardians against the chill of the first millennium's nights. These simple abodes, nestled among the rugged slopes near Lake Titicaca, cradled weary figures wrapped in coarse woolen ponchos, their forms melding into the shadows as the day surrendered to dusk. The air carried a faint, earthy scent of damp stone and highland herbs, a soothing balm that eased the soul after long vigils with flocks of llama and alpaca. Here in these unassuming retreats, life unfolded not in the rush of daily toil, oh no, that was for another tale, but in the quiet interludes of rest, where the world slowed to a gentle rhythm, like a lullaby carried on the breeze. The herders, sturdy folk shaped by generations of high-altitude endurance, reclined against the cool, uneven walls of their shelters, their ponchos draped like protective mantles against the encroaching cold. Woven from the fleece of their charges, these garments bore subtle patterns, faint echoes of Tiwanaku's artistic flair, though far removed from the grand iconography of the urban core. As twilight deepened, the firelight danced within the shelter's confines, casting a warm, golden glow that flickered across weathered faces and rough-hewn stones. The flames crackled softly, their light playing tricks on the eye, illuminating the subtle curves of ceramic vessels left from earlier meals, simple bowls etched with geometric designs, remnants of a culture that thrived on harmony with the land. One might hear the gentle sigh of the roof above, those thatched layers of iku grass creaking ever so slightly under the weight of night breezes, a sound as comforting as a mother's hush, reminding all within that the world outside was vast, yet the shelter held its own quiet magic. In these moments of repose, the herders spoke little, their words sparse and laced with a subtle wit that poked fun at the day's minor trials, perhaps a wayward llama that had strayed too far, or the persistent chill that nipped at exposed skin. Ah, these roofs, one might murmur with a wry smile. They creak like old bones complaining of the wind's mischief, yet they stand as true as the mountains themselves. The air inside grew thick, with the mingled aromas of smoldering herbs and the faint, smoky tang of a dying fire. A sensory tapestry that wrapped around the senses like a warm embrace. Outside, the night sky unfolded in a blanket of stars, their distant shimmer piercing the thin air, while the occasional call of a nocturnal bird echoed faintly, a melodic counterpart to the shelter's intimate symphony. Stone floors, smoothed by time and use, retained a residual warmth from the day's sun, offering a gentle reprieve for tired limbs stretched out in repose. Yet amid this serene tableau, a quiet mystery lingered, one that teased the edges of understanding like a half-forgotten dream. The lost designs of these camps, unearthed in fragments by modern excavators poring over Tiwanaku's ancient sites, spoke of architectural ingenuity that has puzzled scholars for decades. Reports from excavations at places like Pajiri and the surrounding hinterlands reveal stone foundations and wall alignments that suggest a deliberate, almost ritualistic arrangement far more sophisticated than mere survival shelters. These structures, often circular or semi-subterranean, incorporated elements that aligned with celestial events, perhaps the solstices or the rising of key constellations, hinting at a deeper cosmological connection. One can imagine the herders in their moments of stillness, gazing at the stars through cracks in the thatch, their eyes tracing patterns that their ancestors had encoded into the very layout of these camps. Why, one wonders, were such designs abandoned or obscured over time? Excavation reports, drawn from meticulous digs in the 20th and 21st centuries, describe artifacts like polished stone tools and enigmatic carvings that do not align with the more monumental Tiwanaku styles, suggesting a localized adaptation unique to these pastoral outposts. This enigma, wrapped in the folds of history, adds a layer of intrigue to the scene, a subtle whisper that not all knowledge endures the passage of centuries. As the firelight dimmed to embers, the herders might shift slightly, adjusting their ponchos to ward off the deepening cold, their breaths forming faint clouds in the crisp air. The scent of the altiplano, earthy and pure, tinged with the wild rosemary that dotted the hillsides, wafted in through the shelter's narrow openings, blending with the residual warmth to create a cocoon of comfort. One could almost feel the stones themselves, humming with the memory of countless nights, their surfaces etched by wind and time into a tapestry of subtle textures. The creaking of the roof, that persistent, rhythmic sound, became a lullaby in itself, each groan a reminder of the shelter's resilience, standing firm against the elements as if sharing an ancient joke with the stars above. In this detached observation of their world, one senses the herders' quiet acceptance of life's cycles, their rest a testament to the enduring spirit of Tiwanaku's pastoral life. Historical accounts from excavations, such as those conducted by the University of Chicago's team in the mid-20th century, paint a picture of these camps as more than mere refuges. They were nodes in a network of resource management where herders maintained flocks that sustained the broader society. Yet, the mystery deepens when one considers the variability in camp layouts. Some sites show evidence of multiple phases, with later additions overlaying earlier designs, as if the herders were continually refining a lost art. Perhaps these changes reflected shifting environmental pressures like the periodic droughts that plagued the region, or maybe they encoded social shifts within Tiwanaku's hierarchical structure. Whatever the case, the lost designs remain a puzzle, their secrets buried under layers of soil and time, inviting contemplation rather than resolution. In the soft glow of the fire, one might ponder how these shelters, with their unassuming facades, held clues to a way of life that balanced human needs with the rhythms of nature. The night pressed on, the air growing stiller, save for the occasional rustle of wind through the grass outside. The herders, now fully at ease, might close their eyes to the flicker of dying flames, the warmth seeping into their bones like a gentle tide. Sensory details abounded, the faint, metallic taste of the high-altitude air on the tongue, the soft scratch of wool against skin, the distant murmur of a stream carving its path through the valley. Each element wove together into a soothing narrative, a story told not in words, but in the language of the senses. And through it all, the mystery of those lost designs lingered like a shadow, a subtle wit in the grand tapestry of history, reminding one that some secrets are meant to be savored, not solved. As the embers faded into ash, the herders' rest deepened, their breaths syncing with the world's quiet pulse. Yet, beyond these stone walls, the vastness of Tiwanaku's legacy awaited, drawing the mind toward new horizons, where other tales might unfold in the light of dawn. Word count, 1,500. In the high Andean plateau, where the vast expanse of Tiwanaku stretched under an endless sky, the markets unfolded like a gentle rhythm of the earth itself. It was the first millennium sea, a time when herders from distant valleys converged with their burdens of wool, their figures cloaked in simple ponchos woven from the same fleece they carried. The air held a quiet hush, broken only by the soft shuffle of feet on packed earth and the occasional clink of polished stones used as weights in trade. Here, amid the dusty stalls lined with rough-hewn tables, the herders engaged in practices as ancient as the mountains, bartering their goods with a patience that mirrored the slow turn of seasons. These herders, sturdy and weathered by the thin air and relentless winds, arrived at dawn, their ponchos draped loosely over broad shoulders, the fabric's earthy hues blending with the surrounding landscape. Each piece of wool they offered came from llamas and alpacas tended on the windswept plains, fibers soft as a whispered secret, bundled into neat packs that exuded a faint, comforting scent of grass and sun. In the markets of Tiwanaku, a hub of exchange that linked distant communities, they met traders from the lowlands and coasts, all drawn by the promise of mutual gain. The bartering began with subtle gestures and nod, a measured gaze as if the act were a dance choreographed by time itself. A herder might present a bundle of fine-spun wool, its threads gleaming subtly in the morning light, and in return, receive salt blocks from the distant salinas or crafted pottery etched with geometric patterns, symbols of Tiwanaku's sophisticated trade networks. The process was deliberate, devoid of haste, for in this era, commerce flowed not through written ledgers but through spoken agreements and trusted reputations. Historical records from Tiwanaku's archaeological sites, such as the monumental gateways and the remnants of storage structures at Pimapunku, reveal a system built on reciprocity and value assessment. Herders evaluated goods with a keen eye, feeling the weight and texture of items offered in exchange the cool, smooth surface of obsidian tools or the gritty texture of quinoa grains. As they haggled, their voices carried a low, melodic cadence, like a lullaby echoing across the plateau, interspersed with the faint clinking of stones used to measure portions. One might hear the soft thud of a wool bundle placed on a stall, followed by the gentle rustle as hands explored its quality, the dust rising in lazy swirls that caught the sunlight, creating a haze that softened the scene. In these exchanges, wool was prized for its versatility, serving as raw material for textiles that adorned the elite and warmed the common folk alike. Tiwanaku trade practices, as evidenced by artifacts from sites like Akapana, show that herders often traveled long distances, their routes following ancient paths that wound through rugged terrain. They bartered not just for survival, but for cultural enrichment, acquiring items that spoke of broader connections across the Andes. A herder in his poncho might trade a large skein of undyed wool for a bundle of chicha fermented maize, the sweet, tangy aroma wafting through the air as deals were sealed. The sensory world of the market was rich and immersive. The warmth of the sun-baked earth underfoot, the cool breeze carrying hints of distant rain, and the subtle grit of dust that settled on skin and fabric, reminding all present of the land's enduring presence. Yet, amid this serene commerce, there lingered a quiet mystery, the enigma of unrecorded trade logs. Unlike later civilizations with their inscribed tablets or codices, Tiwanaku's economy relied on oral traditions and perishable materials, leaving much to the imagination of modern scholars. Excavations at trade-related sites have uncovered caches of goods, such as wool fragments and ceramic vessels, but the specifics of daily transactions remain elusive, like shadows dancing just out of reach. One might picture a herder concluding a deal under the vast sky, the clink of stones marking the agreement, only for that moment to vanish into the ether, undocumented, and thus eternally speculative. This absence invites a gentle curiosity, a subtle wit in the way history teases us with what could have been a vast network of exchanges that shaped societies without leaving a trace, much like the wind that erases footprints on the plateau. As the day progressed, the herders moved from stall to stall, their ponchos swaying with each step, the fabric's weave catching the light in a way that evoked the intricate patterns of Tiwanaku's artistry. They assessed the wool's quality through touch, running fingers over the fibers to feel for softness and strength, a process honed by generations of herding expertise. Historical examples from Tiwanaku's trade records, inferred from isotopic analysis of artifacts, indicate that wool from the high altiplano was highly sought after, often exchanged for marine shells from the Pacific coast or metallic ores from the eastern slopes. In one imagined scene, a herder barters a particularly fine batch, its wool as light as a sigh, for a set of stone beads that clink softly against each other, their cool surfaces a contrast to the warm fleece. The air filled with the mingled scents of wool, earth, and the occasional hint of roasting tubers from nearby fires, creating a tapestry of sensations that enveloped the market in a calming embrace. This bartering was not merely transactional. It embodied a deeper understanding of value, drawn from Tiwanaku's expansive trade routes that connected the Titicaca Basin to far-flung regions. Scholars piecing together evidence from sites like Tiwanaku's urban core have noted the presence of exotic goods, suggesting that herders played a pivotal role in these networks. A herder might exchange wool for copper ornaments, the metal's faint metallic tang adding to the sensory palate, or for bundles of dried fish, their salty essence evoking the distant sea. The clinking stones, used as counters in these deals, provided a rhythmic backdrop, like a soft percussion accompanying the flow of conversation. Each trade unfolded with a lullaby-like grace, voices low and measured, ensuring that even in negotiation, harmony prevailed. Yet the mystery of the unrecorded logs persisted, a subtle undercurrent to the day's events. In the absence of written accounts, one can only ponder the untold stories the herder who secured a rare item, perhaps a polished mirror of volcanic glass, through a clever barter, only for that exchange to fade into oral legend. This enigma, distinct from the social fabrics of other aspects of Tiwanaku life, adds a layer of intrigue, a gentle reminder that not all histories are captured in stone. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden glow over the stalls, the herders continued their work, the dusty air settling like a blanket, inviting a sense of peace. In the late afternoon, as shadows lengthened across the plateau, the pace of bartering slowed, each herder reflecting on the day's gains. The wool, now redistributed, would journey to weavers in other valleys, its path a testament to Tiwanaku's interconnected world. Sensory details abounded, the faint crunch of gravel underfoot, the warm press of sunlight on poncho-clad backs, and the occasional whisper of wind through the stalls, carrying echoes of distant negotiations. Historical insights from Tiwanaku's trade artifacts, such as the decorated textiles found in burials, underscore the importance of these practices, revealing how wool bartering contributed to the civilization's prosperity without the need for overt documentation. As evening approached, the herders gathered their remaining bundles, the clinking stones tucked away, and prepared to depart. The mystery of their unrecorded trades lingered, a soothing puzzle for the mind, inviting reflection on the impermanence of human endeavors. And so, with the market quieting like a breath drawn in sleep, the scene fades, leading gently to the next whisper of history. In the high Andean plateaus where the winds whispered secrets through the ancient grasses, the herders of Tiwanaku gathered as the first stars pierced the twilight sky. It was the time of the festivals, a rhythm etched into the cycles of the seasons during the first millennium of the Common Era. Amidst their camps, scattered like patches of wild flowers across the vast, undulating terrain, the herders donned their festive ponchos, woven tapestries of deep crimson and earthy ochre, adorned with patterns that danced like shadows on stone. These gatherings were not born of solemn rituals or tight-knit alliances, but rather moments of pure, unscripted joy, where the pulse of life in the highlands found its voice. The air carried a chill that softened with the approach of evening fires, their flames leaping gently as if in quiet conversation with the stars. Herders moved with a graceful sway, their feet tracing patterns on the ground that had been passed down through generations, though never fully captured in the temple records. Imagine the soft thud of leather soles against the packed earth, a counterpoint to the distant bleat of llamas settling for the night. Drums echoed faintly at first, a low murmur that built like the rising tide of a mountain stream, their beats resonating through the valleys and drawing the dancers into a circle. Each strike was deliberate, not forceful, but inviting, as if the instruments themselves were coaxing the herders into a trance of celebration. In those circles, the ponchos swirled like autumn leaves caught in a breeze, their fringes brushing against the cool night air. A young herder, perhaps named for the swift alpaca that roamed the slopes, led the dance with steps that seemed both ancient and spontaneous. His poncho, fringed with bits of polished shell that glimmered in the torchlight, caught the glow of fires built from aromatic shrubs, filling the camp with the subtle scent of sage and smoldering herbs. The flames flickered warmly, casting elongated shadows that played across the faces of the dancers, highlighting the subtle smiles and the quiet laughter that bubbled up like spring water. There was a wit in their movements, a playful dodge and weave that turned the dance into a light-hearted game, as if the herders were teasing the wind itself. As the night deepened, the drums grew more insistent, their echoes weaving through the camps like threads in a loom. The herders' breaths came in rhythmic puffs, visible in the crisp air, mingling with the faint haze of smoke that hung like a gentle veil. One could almost feel the texture of the ponchos, coarse and comforting against the skin, their colors shifting in the firelight to reveal hidden designs, geometric motifs that spoke of the land's abundance without uttering a word. The dances were not hurried. They unfolded slowly, like the gradual unfurling of a highland flower, each step a meditation on the herders' bond with their flocks. Yet, amidst this serenity, there lingered a mystery, one that the temple records of Tiwanaku only hinted at in their cryptic carvings. Those records, etched into the great stones of the ceremonial centers, spoke of festivals as seasonal markers, tied to the migrations of herds and the rhythms of the rains. But they left much unsaid, veiling certain rites in an enigma that teased the imagination. What unrecorded customs might have unfolded under the cover of night when the drums fell silent and the dancers paused to catch their breath? Perhaps it was a simple exchange of tales around the fires, stories of lost paths through the fog-shrouded passes, or gestures that carried meanings lost to time. The mystery lay not in grand secrets, but in the subtle, unspoken ways the herders marked their joys, ways that evaded the scribes' stones and lived only in the memories of those who witnessed them. The camps themselves were humble abodes, clusters of thatched shelters nestled against the slopes, where the herders had gathered their llamas and alpacas for the festivities. The animals watched from the periphery, their eyes reflecting the torch glow like distant stars, adding a layer of quiet companionship to the scene. One might hear the soft rustle of woolen blankets being adjusted, or the occasional clink of clay vessels filled with a mild, fermented brew derived from highland tubers, its earthy taste lingering on the tongue like a whispered promise. The herders sipped sparingly, their movements deliberate and unhurried, as if savoring the moment's tranquility. In the dance, pairs would form and dissolve like mist on the mountainside, their ponchos brushing against one another in a soft whisper of fabric. There was a subtle wit in the way they mirrored each other's steps, a playful imitation that brought forth gentle chuckles, light as the evening breeze. One herder might feign a stumble, only to recover with an exaggerated flourish, drawing appreciative nods from the circle. The torchlight, held aloft on long poles, cast a warm, amber hue over the scene, illuminating the fine details, the intricate knots in the ponchos, the glint of beads woven into hair, the faint sheen of sweat on brows despite the cool air. As the festival progressed, the sensory tapestry grew richer. The air was alive with the mingled scents of roasting grains and the fresh, herbaceous aroma of the surrounding grasslands, carried on winds that carried whispers from distant peaks. Sounds blended seamlessly. The steady drumbeats, the occasional trill of a flute fashioned from animal bone, and the harmonious hum of voices rising in wordless song. It was a lullaby of the highlands, soothing and enveloping, where each element flowed into the next without sharp interruptions. Yet woven through this peaceful celebration was the enduring puzzle of those unrecorded rites. The temple inscriptions, with their depictions of herders and their flocks, suggested festivals as markers of abundance, but they omitted the finer nuances, the personal touches that made each gathering unique. Perhaps in the quiet hours before dawn, the herders performed gestures known only to their kin, simple acts like tracing patterns in the dirt or sharing tokens from the day's herding. This mystery added a layer of intrigue, a gentle enigma that invited contemplation rather than speculation, much like the way the stars above seemed to guard their own secrets. The dances continued into the night, the herders' forms blending with the shadows and light in a hypnotic rhythm. One could imagine the feel of the cool earth beneath bare feet, the slight give of the ground after a day of rains, and the warmth of bodies moving in unison. Ponchos, heavy with history, seemed to carry the weight of generations, their colors fading and brightening with the shifting flames. There was no rush to these festivities. Time itself seemed to slow, allowing each moment to unfold with the patience of the ancient landscape. As the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in soft pastels, the herders began to wind down their dances. The drums tapered to a faint whisper, and the torches dimmed, their glow surrendering to the growing light. In those final moments, one might catch a glimpse of the herders exchanging quiet words, their voices a soothing murmur against the awakening world. The mystery of their unrecorded rites lingered, a subtle undercurrent that promised more questions than answers, drawing the imagination toward horizons yet unexplored. And so, as the camps quieted and the herders returned to their daily rhythms, the spirit of the festival faded like a dream at daybreak, leaving behind echoes that would whisper through the ages. Perhaps, in the next gathering, new layers of this gentle enigma would unfold, bridging the past to whatever lay ahead. In the high Andean plateaus of Tiwanaku, where the first millennium sea unfolded under vast skies streaked with the soft blush of dawn, the women of herder families moved through their days like threads in an ancient weave. Their world was one of gentle rhythms, far from the clamor of cities, nestled among the windswept hills and sparse grasslands that cradled flocks of llamas and alpacas. Dressed in simple ponchos of coarse wool, dyed in earthy tones of ochre and deep indigo, these women tended to the fibers of life, their hands shaping not just garments, but the very fabric of survival. The air carried a crisp chill, tempered by the low sun, and the distant bleat of animals mingled with the steady clack of looms, a sound as soothing as a heartbeat echoing through the camp. Each morning, as mist lifted from the dew-kissed earth, the women rose before the full light, their movements deliberate and unhurried. In the communal shelters of stone and thatch, they gathered around open fires that crackled with the promise of warmth, flames dancing in hypnotic patterns that cast golden hues across their faces. The scent of burning llama dung mixed with the fresh, slightly oily aroma of newly shorn wool, a combination that spoke of continuity and care. One woman, her poncho draped loosely over her shoulders, would select a bundle of spun yarn from the baskets woven from iku grass, her fingers tracing the fibers with the familiarity of long practice. The loom stood nearby, a wooden frame lashed together with cords, its warped threads stretched taut like the strings of a forgotten instrument waiting to sing. As she sat cross-legged on a worn alpaca hide, the woman began her work, the shuttle gliding back and forth with a rhythmic clack-clack that blended into the ambient hush of the camp. This was no hurried task. It was a meditation, each pass of the weft a deliberate stroke that built patterns inspired by the mountains themselves, zigzags for the rugged peaks, subtle waves for the streams that fed their herds. The firelight flickered across the loom, illuminating the intricate designs taking shape, and one might imagine a subtle wit in the way the yarn twisted, as if the wool harbored its own quiet secrets, playfully resisting the weaver's will before yielding to her touch. Around her, other women joined in, their ponchos rustling softly as they adjusted their positions, the collective sound a lullaby of industry that soothed the soul even as it sustained the body. In Tiwanaku's society, these women were the unseen architects of resilience, their roles extending beyond the visible act of weaving to encompass the management of the herd's bounty. They selected the finest fleeces from the animals that grazed on the tough altiplano grasses, their eyes trained to discern the subtle differences in texture and color that spoke of quality. The process began with the shearing, a task performed in the cool of early summer when the sun's warmth coaxed the animals into docility. But it was the women's hands that transformed raw fiber into usable thread. Using drop spindles of carved wood, they spun the wool with a gentle twirl, a spindle whirring softly as it descended, the motion as natural as breathing. The air filled with the faint, earthy scent of lanolin, a reminder of the animal's wild essence, while the warmth of the fire seeped into their bones, easing the strain of hours bent over their work. Yet, their contributions wove deeper into the fabric of daily life. In the camps scattered across the vast, undulating landscape, these women oversaw the drying and storing of provisions, ensuring that the wool and hides were preserved against the harsh winds that swept down from the peaks. They mended ponchos and created new ones, each piece a testament to their skill, adorned with motifs drawn from Tiwanaku's textile traditions, geometric patterns that echoed the step pyramids and sacred enclosures of their homeland. The clack of the loom persisted, a steady counterpoint to the occasional gusts of wind that carried whispers of distant thunder, and in those moments one could almost hear a wry undertone, as if the yarn itself murmured, "See how I bend but never break." Historical records from Tiwanaku, preserved in the fragments of ancient textiles unearthed from burial sites and ceremonial contexts, reveal the precision and artistry of these women's labor. The fine weaves, often found in elite tombs, suggest that their work held value beyond mere utility, possibly serving as offerings or symbols of status. One such example, a poncho fragment from the site of Pucara, displays intricate bands of color that must have required months of patient effort, the threads dyed with pigments derived from local minerals and plants. The women ground these pigments themselves, crushing cochineal insects for reds and using the roots of highland shrubs for yellows, their fingers stained in a palette of earth's own making. As they worked, the fire's glow illuminated their faces, casting shadows that danced like fleeting thoughts, and the air grew heavy with the herbal scent of the dye simmering in clay pots. In this serene rhythm, the women's roles extended to the subtle arts of preservation, where they guarded the knowledge of textile techniques passed down through generations. They selected fibers not only for strength, but for their ability to withstand the altiplano's extremes, wool that retained warmth against the biting cold, fabrics that repelled the relentless rain. Yet, amid this meticulous craft, there lingered a mystery, one that the records of Tiwanaku leave tantalizingly unrecorded. What other tasks did these women undertake in the quiet corners of their camps, away from the eyes of history? Perhaps they held secrets in the weaving of not just cloth, but stories, embedding tales of the stars and spirits into the very threads, a subtle wit in the patterns that spoke of resilience and hidden wisdom. The clack of the loom might have masked softer conversations, exchanges of knowledge that faded like smoke from the fire, leaving only whispers for us to ponder. As the day waned, the women paused to share a simple meal, perhaps a stew of tubers and dried meat, its savory steam rising to mingle with the cooling air. They sat in a loose circle, the fire's embers glowing like distant stars, and in those moments, the camp felt like a sanctuary, a place where time unfolded with gentle grace. The sensory tapestry of their world was rich. The soft crunch of grass underfoot, the metallic tang of the high-altitude air, the warm weight of wool in their laps. One could almost feel the subtle humor in their endurance, a quiet defiance against the vastness around them, as if to say that even in isolation, their hands shaped destiny. Through the lens of Tiwanaku's textile legacy, we glimpse how these women were central to the society's endurance, their weaving not merely a craft, but a form of quiet power. Archaeological evidence, such as the detailed iconography on ceramic vessels from the Tiwanaku heartland, depicts figures in ponchos engaged in similar activities, suggesting a continuity of practice that spans centuries. Yet, the mystery persists. What unseen labors did they perform, those tasks that left no trace in stone or cloth? Did they tend to the spiritual aspects of their world, offering silent invocations as they wove, or devise innovations in fiber preparation that eluded record? The firelight's flicker might have concealed such enigmas, casting shadows that hinted at deeper layers of their existence. In the fading light, as the stars emerged like scattered jewels above the plateaus, the women folded their work away, their ponchos whispering against the night. The clack of the loom fell silent, replaced by the soft sigh of the wind, and one might imagine a gentle transition, a bridge to other stories waiting in the shadows. For in Tiwanaku's ancient weave, the roles of these women endure as a coming thread, drawing us onward to the next whisper of history. Word count: 1,500. In the vast Andean highlands, where the altiplano stretched under a canopy of stars, the herders of Tiwanaku gathered as twilight softened the rugged peaks. It was the first millennium of the Common Era, a time when llama herds roamed the thin air and ancient paths wound through terraced fields. Wrapped in coarse ponchos woven from alpaca wool, the herders settled around flickering fires, their faces etched by wind and wisdom. Flames danced low, casting gentle shadows that played across the stone-strewn ground, and the air carried the earthy scent of burning peat mixed with the faint, herbal tang of wild herbs crushed underfoot. Here, in these quiet evenings, storytelling unfolded like a river's patient flow, binding the community in threads of memory and mystery. The herders, men and women alike, sat cross-legged on hides spread over the cool earth, their voices rising in soft rhythms that matched the crackling of logs. One elder, his poncho frayed at the edges from years of tending flocks, would begin with a tale of the ancestors' migrations, his words emerging like a gentle breeze through the grass. In the days when the rivers were young, he might say, his tones smooth and unhurried, our people followed the herds across vast plains, reading the stars as guides through the night. The fire popped softly, sending sparks spiraling upward like fireflies, and the listeners leaned in, their breaths mingling with the smoke. The warmth of the flames kissed their cheeks, while the distant bleat of a llama echoed from the darkness, reminding all of the world beyond the circle. These stories were not mere entertainment. They were lifelines, preserving the knowledge of survival in a harsh land. A young herder, her poncho draped loosely over her shoulders, might interject with a clever twist, her voice light and melodic, carrying a subtle wit that teased the edges of the narrative. And so the clever llama outwitted the storm, she would add, her eyes glinting in the firelight, for even in the fiercest winds, a wise heart knows when to huddle and wait. The group would chuckle softly, the sound like rustling leaves, as the tale wove through descriptions of ancient routes and forgotten watering holes. Sensory details enriched each, recounting the crisp chill that nipped at exposed skin, the soothing aroma of roasted tubers buried in the embers, the faint crunch of gravel under shifting feet. These elements grounded the stories in the tangible world, making the past feel as immediate as the present. As the night deepened, the tales turned to the subtleties of herding life, drawing from the oral traditions that had sustained Andean communities for centuries. One story spoke of a legendary herder who read the moods of the animals like pages in a book, predicting the first snows by the way the llamas pawed at the ground. The narrator's voice flowed steadily, with the occasional pause marked only by the fire's whisper, creating a lullaby-like cadence that eased the listeners into a state of peaceful reflection. He watched the clouds gather, the elder would continue, and in their shapes saw the paths his flock must take, avoiding the hidden gullies where cold winds lingered. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of dew forming on the grass, and the stars above seemed to pulse in rhythm with the storytelling, as if the cosmos itself were listening. Yet woven into these evenings was a quiet mystery, the enigma of lost oral tales, those fragments of history that had slipped away like mist at dawn. The herders knew that not all stories survived the passage of time. Some were carried off by the winds of change, erased by migrations or the relentless march of seasons. In Tiwanaku, where the society flourished through agriculture and animal husbandry, tales of early herders navigating treacherous passes or outsmarting predators had once been common. But as generations passed, certain narratives faded, leaving gaps in the collective memory. One elder might muse, his voice detached and serene. There were stories of the great herds that vanished in the fog, their paths known only to those who heard the tales long ago. This mystery lent a poignant depth to the gatherings, a subtle reminder that knowledge, like the fire's glow, could dim if not tended. The listeners felt a gentle sorrow, not sharp or overwhelming, but a soft undercurrent like the distant rumble of a stream, acknowledging the impermanence of their traditions. To expand on these lost tales, the herders often improvised, drawing from sensory experiences that sparked imagination. The feel of a poncho's wool against the skin, warm and reassuring, might inspire a story of a herder who used his garment as a shield against the biting cold of high altitudes, turning a simple tool into a symbol of resilience. Or the sound of the wind whistling through the canyons could evoke memories of ancestors who whispered secrets to the gales, secrets that now echoed only in faint, elusive ways. In these editions, a subtle wit emerged, as when a storyteller quipped about a stubborn llama that argued with the thunder, its imagined retorts bringing light-hearted smiles amidst the calm. Historically, such storytelling drew from the rich Andean oral traditions, where knowledge was passed through generations via mnemonic devices and communal recitation. In Tiwanaku, centered around Lake Titicaca, herders relied on these methods to transmit practical wisdom, patterns of migration, signs of weather shifts, and the art of animal care without the need for written records. A tale might describe how herders observed the subtle changes in grass textures, from the velvety softness of new growth to the coarse brittleness of drought-stricken blades, using these details to predict the best grazing spots. The fire's glow illuminated faces marked by the sun's harsh kiss, and the scent of charring wood blended with the night's crisp purity, creating an atmosphere where every sense was engaged. As the stories progressed, the herders' voices blended in harmony, each contribution building upon the last, much like the layered stones of their ancient structures. One narrative might recount a herder's journey across the Puna grasslands, where the air thinned and the horizon blurred into endless shades of gray. He felt the ground rise beneath him. The storyteller would say, each step a negotiation with the earth, until he found the hidden valley where the waters ran clear. Sensory elements abounded. The satisfying crackle of logs, shifting in the fire, the gentle warmth radiating outward, the faint taste of smoke on the tongue from breaths drawn too close to the flames. These details not only enriched the tales, but also served as anchors, ensuring the stories remained vivid and alive. Amidst this, the mystery of the lost tales lingered like a shadow at the fire's edge. Perhaps, the herders pondered, some stories had been carried away by travelers or altered by time's subtle erosion, leaving only echoes in the wind. An elder might reflect, with a calm detachment, on how certain paths once described in detail were now mere legends, their specifics faded like footprints in the rain. This added a layer of intrigue, a quiet puzzle that invited speculation without resolution, keeping the tradition dynamic and ever-evolving. To illustrate further, consider the herders' use of environmental cues in their narratives. The way the moonlight silvered the peaks could spark a story of a herder who navigated by its glow, his poncho billowing like a sail in the night breeze. Or the earthy aroma of the soil after a rare rain might evoke tales of bountiful seasons past, where herds thrived and stories multiplied. These expansions, drawn from historical examples of Andean adaptability, ensured the storytelling sessions were not static but responsive to the world around them. As the fire dwindled to embers, the herders' voices softened, the tales drawing to a close like the fading stars at dawn. In these moments, the mystery of what had been lost only heightened the value of what remained, a testament to the enduring spirit of their traditions. And so, with the night yielding to the first hints of morning, the circle dispersed, carrying the warmth of shared words into the new day, gently leading toward the stories yet to unfold. In the high valleys of the ancient Andes, where the earth breathed steadily under a vast sky, the people of Tiwanaku moved through their world with a rhythm as old as the mountains themselves. It was the first millennium of the Common Era, and in the shadow of great stone gateways, herders from the windswept plateaus gathered at the edges of bustling markets. These men and women, draped in coarse woolen ponchos that whispered against the breeze, carried bundles of fleece on their backs, their steps tracing dusty trails that wound down from the grazing lands. The air held a gentle chill, carrying the faint scent of wild herbs and damp soil, as if the land itself were lulling the day into a peaceful flow. The herders arrived at dawn, their ponchos a mosaic of earthy hues, deep ochres, and muted greens that blended with the landscape like echoes of the llamas they tended. Each garment was woven from the very wool they brought to trade, thick and warm against the thin Andean air. As they set down their loads, the soft thud of bundles on packed earth mingled with the distant clinking of stone tools being arranged by traders. The market unfolded under the open sky, a sprawl of simple stalls, framed by the monolithic ruins that spoke of Tiwanaku's enduring presence. Here, amid the gentle hum of voices, the herders paused, their eyes scanning for familiar faces among the traders who journeyed from distant valleys. One herder, a man named Taki, with weathered hands and a poncho patched from years of use, unraveled a length of wool for inspection. The fibers caught the morning light, soft as a whispered secret, their natural oils releasing a subtle, earthy aroma that evoked the high pastures where his llamas roamed. Traders, clad in lighter tunics and carrying leather pouches of goods from the coasts and lowlands, approached with measured steps. They bartered not with shouts, but with the calm cadence of negotiation, their words flowing like a stream over stones. "This wool is fine," one trader murmured, running his fingers through the strands, feeling their resilience. "It will warm many hearts through the long nights." Taki nodded, his voice steady and low, as if sharing a story rather than striking a deal. In exchange, he sought salt blocks from the distant salinas, or perhaps colorful beads from the jungle fringes, items that spoke of networks stretching far beyond the altiplano. The interactions unfolded with a soothing predictability, each exchange a dance of gestures and subtle nods. The herders squatted on the ground, their ponchos pooling around them like pools of shadow, while traders knelt opposite, laying out their offerings. A clinking sound arose now and then, not harsh but rhythmic, as small stones used for weighing goods tapped against wooden scales. These simple tools, carved from local quartz, added a musical undercurrent to the scene, like raindrops on a tin roof in the quiet hours before sleep. The dust from the trails lingered in the air, a fine mist that settled on skin and fabric, carrying with it the faint, comforting scent of sun-baked earth and distant herds. As the sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow over the market, the bartering deepened. Taki's wool, spun from the fleeces of his strongest llamas, was prized for its durability, ideal for the cold seasons when winds howled across the plains. He traded not just for necessities, but for stories embedded in the goods themselves. A trader from the west might offer shells from the Pacific, their smooth surfaces cool to the touch, evoking the crash of waves far away. In return, Taki shared tales of his herds, of how the animals navigated treacherous paths with unerring instinct, their bells tinkling softly in the fog-shrouded mornings. The exchanges were laced with a subtle wit, a gentle teasing that lightened the air. "Your wool is as stubborn as a llama in the rain," the trader might say with a faint smile, and Taki would chuckle, replying, "And your shells are as slippery as the fish that hide in them." Yet beneath this serene surface, a quiet mystery wove through the interactions, the unrecorded trade deals that slipped like shadows between the cracks of history. In Tiwanaku, not all barters happened in the open market. Some occurred in hushed corners, away from the main thoroughfares, where herders and traders spoke in low tones under the cover of dusk. These deals, inferred from the archaeological traces left in ancient refuse piles and scattered artifacts, hinted at a world of unspoken agreements. Perhaps Taki would slip a finer bundle of wool to a trusted trader, receiving in return not just goods, but favors, access to rare herbs or tools that never appeared in the public ledgers. The mystery lay in their impermanence, these transactions vanishing into the ether, leaving only faint clues for modern eyes. A broken bead here, a fragment of wool there, suggested exchanges that balanced power in ways the official records, etched on stone stelae or preserved in ceramic vessels, could never capture. It was as if the winds themselves carried away the details, leaving behind only the echo of what might have been. The sensory tapestry of these moments enveloped everything. The warmth of the sun on poncho fabric, the gritty feel of dust between fingers as goods were handled, the occasional bleat of a llama echoing from the outskirts, all wove a calming lull. Herders like Taki moved with a deliberate grace, their movements unhurried, as if time itself bent to the pace of the altiplano. Traders, too, adopted this rhythm, their voices a soft murmur that blended with the rustle of leaves in the wind-swept shrubs. One could almost drift into a trance, lulled by the repetitive clink of stones being counted, each sound a gentle reminder of the cycles of life and trade that sustained Tiwanaku. Historical accounts, drawn from the remnants of Tiwanaku's trade networks, paint a picture of a society where herding was not merely survival, but a cornerstone of economy. Excavations at sites like Pimapunku reveal caches of wool and animal remains, indicating the scale of these interactions. Herders supplied the raw materials that fueled textile production, a craft that spread across the empire, evidenced by spindle whorls and weaving tools found in domestic contexts. Yet, the unrecorded deals added layers of intrigue, suggesting that personal alliances and secret pacts played a role in maintaining the flow of goods. In one such example, inferred from the distribution of exotic items like obsidian from the north, herders might have facilitated trades that bypassed official channels, their ponchos concealing not just wool, but the keys to unseen networks. As the day waned, the market softened into twilight, the herders gathering their earnings, perhaps a pouch of seeds or a bundle of cordage, and preparing for the return journey. Taki adjusted his poncho, feeling the weight of his trades, and exchanged a final, knowing glance with the trader. The dusty trails called once more, their paths illuminated by the fading light, promising the quiet solitude of the highlands. In these moments, the mystery of the unrecorded deals lingered like a half-forgotten dream, a subtle enigma that added depth to the everyday rhythm of life. But as the stars began to emerge, twinkling like distant campfires, one couldn't help but wonder what lay beyond this world of herders and traders. Perhaps the next tale would unravel the threads of other lives in Tiwanaku, drawing closer to the heart of its enduring legacy. In the high Andean plateaus of Tiwanaku, where the earth met the sky in a vast embrace of golden grasses and distant snow-capped peaks, the herders gathered as twilight softened the world. It was the first millennium CE, a time when the air carried the whisper of ancient winds across the Altiplano, and the herders, cloaked in heavy woolen ponchos dyed in earthy hues of ochre and deep indigo, tended to the tools that sustained their flocks. These were not hurried tasks, but rituals of care, performed with a steady rhythm that echoed the heartbeat of the mountains themselves. The camps nestled in shallow valleys, sheltered from the chill that descended with the stars, and here the herders sat in circles around low fires that crackled gently, their flames painting warm shadows on the stone-strewn ground. Each man and woman wore their poncho like a second skin, the fabric woven from the finest llama wool, its fringes brushing against the earth as they leaned forward to work. In their hands, the shears gleamed dully, tools forged from meteoric iron and hammered with skill passed down through generations, though none could say exactly how those first designs had come to be. The herders moved with a quiet assurance, their fingers tracing the edges of the blades, testing for the sharpness that would shear without harm. A grinding stone lay before each one, rough-hewn from volcanic rock, unearthed in the nearby hills, its surface etched with the faint grooves of countless sharpenings. The process began with a soft sigh, as if the stone itself breathed in anticipation. One herder, an elder with lines etched deep into his weathered face like the cracks in the ancient monoliths of Tiwanaku, placed his shears against the stone and began to move them in slow, deliberate strokes. The sound that followed was a lullaby of its own, a low, rhythmic scrape that blended with the wind's murmur, each pass drawing out a fine dust that sparkled in the firelight. This dust, fine as mist from a distant waterfall, carried the faint scent of metal and earth, mingling with the wool fibers that clung to the air from the flocks grazing nearby. The herders worked in companionable silence, their ponchos draped loosely over their shoulders, allowing the cool night air to brush against their skin. One might pause to wipe a bead of sweat from his brow, his hand leaving a faint smear of grit, or another might chuckle softly at the way the firelight danced on a freshly honed edge, as if the blade were whispering secrets of the day's labors. There was a subtle wit in their movements, a knowing glance shared when a stone slipped and sent a spark flying, reminding them that even the most reliable tools had their quirks, much like the stubborn llamas that wandered the slopes. As the sharpening continued, the sensory world unfolded around them. The grinding stones felt cool and solid under their palms, their weight a comforting anchor in the vastness of the night. The wool dust, stirred by the slightest breeze, settled like a gentle veil, carrying with it the earthy aroma of the herds, a mix of lanolin and highland herbs that evoked the vast pastures where the animals roamed. In the distance, the soft bleats of llamas echoed faintly, a reminder of the bond between herder and flock, though here, in this moment, the focus remained solely on the tools. The shears, with their curved blades designed for precision, required careful maintenance to avoid nicks that could mar the wool or, worse, injure an animal, but the herders approached this with a detached calm, as if the potential mishaps were mere shadows passing in the wind. Archaeological traces from Tiwanaku reveal how these tools were more than mere implements. They were extensions of the herders' lives, crafted with techniques that spoke of innovation born from necessity. Excavations at sites like Pumapunku have uncovered similar grinding stones, worn smooth by repetitive use, and fragments of iron tools that hint at a metallurgical knowledge advanced for its time. Yet, amid this care, there lingered a mystery, the enigma of lost tool designs that archaeologists ponder to this day. How had the herders of Tiwanaku devised blades so finely balanced, their edges capable of gliding through thick wool with effortless grace? These designs, evident in the artifacts pulled from the earth, vanished from the historical record as abruptly as a mountain mist at dawn, leaving behind only questions. Perhaps they were adaptations from earlier cultures, or innovations sparked by the rare iron meteorites that fell from the skies, but no one can say for certain. The herders themselves might have guarded these secrets, passing them orally through tales around the fire, only for time to erode them like wind on stone. In one corner of the camp, a younger herder paused to examine his shears, holding them up to the moonlight that filtered through the clouds. The blade caught the pale glow, revealing subtle patterns etched into the metal patterns that echoed the geometric motifs found on Tiwanaku's monumental gateways, suggesting a deeper cultural weave. He ran a thumb along the edge, feeling the keenness that now promised efficiency, and a faint smile played on his lips, as if amused by the blade's quiet triumph over dullness. The air grew cooler as the night deepened, and the wool dusts settled thicker, coating their hands and the stones with a fine layer that glimmered like forgotten stars. The process demanded patience, each stroke of the stone a meditation that allowed the mind to wander. One herder might recall the feel of the highland sun on his back during the day, while another thought of the tool's ancestors, those primitive stones and bones that had evolved into these refined instruments. Historical examples from Tiwanaku's artifacts show that such maintenance was not isolated. Similar grinding stones have been found in domestic contexts, indicating a widespread practice among the herders. Yet, the mystery persisted. Why had certain designs faded into obscurity? Were they tied to rituals lost to conquest or time, or perhaps to the shifting trade routes that brought new materials and ideas? The herders worked on, their ponchos rustling softly, unaware or unconcerned with the puzzles they left for future generations. As the stars wheeled overhead, the camp fell into a rhythm that felt eternal, the scraping of stone against metal a soothing counterpoint to the night's hush. The sensory details enveloped everything, the faint metallic tang in the air, the warmth of the fire seeping into tired muscles, the soft give of the ground beneath them. One herder leaned back, stretching his arms, and remarked in a voice as gentle as a breeze, "These blades sing their own songs, don't they?" His companion nodded, a spark of wit in his eyes, for even in the simplicity of maintenance, there was a quiet joy in preserving what worked. By the time the shears were honed to perfection, the fires had burned low, their embers glowing like the eyes of watchful guardians. The herders set their tools aside, wrapping them in cloth to protect against the dew that would soon form, and gazed out at the darkened landscape. In this moment of quiet accomplishment, the mystery of the lost designs lingered like a half-remembered dream, a reminder that some knowledge slips away even as new paths emerge. As the night deepened, the herders settled into their blankets, the sharpened tools ready for the morrow, and the altiplano whispered of stories yet to unfold, drawing one ever closer to the next dawn. In the vast expanse of the Andean highlands, where the earth stretches like a gentle blanket under the eternal sky, the quiet plains hold their secrets close. Time-worn camps dot the landscape, their shelters leaning into the wind like weary sentinels, their stones softened by centuries of rain and sun. Herders, draped in ponchos frayed at the edges, like old memories, move with a rhythm as slow as the drifting clouds. It is the second millennium of the Common Era, and here, amid the whispering grasses and the faint chill of the air, the ancient practice of herding begins to fade, a subtle unraveling that leaves only echoes of what once was. The camps themselves tell a story of gradual retreat. Adobe walls, once sturdy against the mountain winds, now crumble at the slightest touch, their surfaces etched with the patina of age. A herder might pause in the dim light of dawn, his calloused hands brushing against the rough texture of a collapsing roof, feeling the dust that rises like a sigh from the earth. The air carries a faint, earthy scent, mingled with the dry tang of high-altitude herbs, as if the land itself is exhaling a long-held breath. Llamas and alpacas, those faithful companions of the Andes, wonder fewer in number now, their soft footfalls on the packed soil growing sparse. In the quiet hours, when the sun hangs low, one can almost hear the absence, the lack of bleats and bells that once filled these valleys with life. It was not always so. Drawing from the careful excavations at Tiwanaku, where archaeologists have uncovered remnants of a thriving herding society, we glimpse a world where these animals sustained communities through trade and sustenance. Yet, as the centuries turned, something shifted, a mysterious ebb that left behind these aging outposts. The herders, their faces lined like the cracks in their ponchos, continue their routines with a quiet dignity, perhaps unaware of the larger unraveling. One might sit by a low fire at dusk, the flames casting a warm glow on the woven fabric of his garment, its threads worn thin from years of wind and weather. The fire crackles softly, releasing a soothing aroma of burning llama dung, a scent that speaks of continuity even as change whispers through the air. The plains themselves seem to conspire in this decline, their vastness a canvas of subtle transformation. Grasses sway gently in the breeze, their blades brushing against one another with a sound like distant lullabies, while the distant peaks stand sentinel, their snow-capped tops glistening under a serene sky. Here, the temperature dips with the sun, wrapping the herders in a cool embrace that seeps through their clothing, a reminder of the highlands' unyielding nature. Excavations at Tiwanaku reveal pens and corrals, their outlines still visible in the soil, where herds once thrived under careful management. But now these structures lie half buried, their stones smoothed by time, as if the earth is gently reclaiming what was once hers. A herder might trace the faint impressions with his boot, feeling the compacted earth give way slightly, and wonder at the silence that has settled over it all. Subtle wit lingers in the way the wind plays tricks, rustling through empty enclosures as if chuckling at the folly of human endeavors. Oh, how the herders adapted! Their lives a dance with the elements, yet even they could not foresee this quiet departure. The mystery of it all adds a layer of intrigue, for the causes remain unrecorded, lost to the mists of time. Was it the slow creep of drought, as suggested by the parched layers unearthed at Tiwanaku, where pollen samples speak of diminishing rains? Or perhaps shifts in the social fabric, where communities disperse like scattering seeds on the wind? No chronicles survive to clarify, leaving only the soft puzzle of what was and what might have been. In this detachment, one finds a certain peace, for the plains do not mourn. They simply endure. As evening falls, the herders gather what remains of their flocks, their movements deliberate and unhurried, like the steady flow of a mountain stream. The ponchos, heavy with the day's dust, carry the faint warmth of the sun-soaked wool, a tactile comfort against the cooling air. One can imagine the soft thud of a herder's staff on the ground, a rhythmic tap that echoes faintly across the open space, blending with the distant call of a solitary bird. The shelters, though crumbling, offer a semblance of shelter, their interiors dim and cool, scented with the musty aroma of aged thatch. Historical accounts from Tiwanaku's digs paint pictures of similar sites, where tools and bones suggest a once vibrant economy now faded, yet the details blur into speculation, enhancing the enigma. In this lullaby of decline, the sensory world softens the edges of loss. The quiet plains hum with the subtlest of sounds, the whisper of wind through grass, the occasional rustle of a rodent in the underbrush, the distant rumble of a far-off storm that never quite arrives. Herders, with their weathered faces and steady gazes, embody a resilience tinged with melancholy, their ponchos fluttering like flags of surrender to time's inexorable march. Excavations reveal artifacts, simple pottery shards, perhaps once used to hold water for the herds, that now lie scattered, their surfaces smoothed by erosion, as if polished by the same winds that shaped the landscape. Each find hints at a society that thrived and then receded, leaving behind not tragedy, but a gentle fading, like the last light of day. Yet amid this calm, there is a subtle wit in the persistence of life. A lone llama might nuzzle at a herder's hand, its breath warm and moist against the skin, a reminder that even in decline, small joys endure. The mystery deepens as one considers the unrecorded reasons, perhaps environmental shifts that Tiwanaku's soil cores imply, with layers of sediment telling tales of altered rainfall patterns. But no definitive answer emerges, allowing the imagination to wander freely like clouds drifting over the peaks. The herders carry on, their days marked by the simple rituals of care, the feel of coarse wool under their fingers, the taste of high-altitude air on their tongues. As the stars begin to prick the darkening sky, the camp settle into a profound stillness. The air grows crisp, carrying a hint of frost that nips at exposed skin, while the earth beneath releases its stored warmth in a slow exhale. From Tiwanaku's reports, we know of similar sites where herding waned, leaving behind traces of abandonment, faded paths, overgrown pens that speak without words. Here too the decline unfolds not in chaos, but in a soothing rhythm, a natural cadence that lulls the observer into reflection. The herders in their worn ponchos become part of the landscape, their stories woven into the fabric of the Andes. One might lie back on a mat of dried grass, feeling its prickly yet comforting texture, and gaze upward at the vast night sky, where the Milky Way arches like a river of light. The mystery of the unrecorded causes lingers like a half-forgotten dream, inviting contemplation rather than distress. Was it the gradual strain of overgrazing, as evidenced by the depleted soils at Tiwanaku, or the subtle pull of migration to lower lands? It matters little in the moment, for the plains continue their eternal watch, their quiet beauty a balm to the soul. In this detached observation, one finds a subtle humor in the way the world turns, cycles of rise and fall as predictable as the sun's path. The herders, with their unassuming grace, adapt without complaint, their lives a testament to endurance. As the night deepens, the air fills with the soft chorus of nocturnal insects, a gentle symphony that underscores the passage of time. From the excavations, we learn of similar transitions, where herding societies evolved or dissolved, their legacies etched in the earth. Yet, even as this chapter closes, another begins to stir on the horizon. The stars above seem to hint at new tales waiting to unfold in the morning light. For now, though, the Andean plains rest in their soothing embrace, a cradle of ancient mysteries and quiet wonders. As the first tints of dawn touch the sky, one can't help but feel the pull toward what lies ahead, where other stories await in the shadows of history. Word count: 1,500. In the quiet expanse of Tiwanaku, where the altiplano stretches like a vast, breathing quilt under the soft Andean sky, the morning light filters through wisps of mist, caressing the ancient stones. Archaeologists move with deliberate grace, their brushes whispering against the earth, uncovering fragments of a world long folded into legend. Here, amidst the ruins that UNESCO has deemed a testament to human ingenuity, the legacy of Andean herders emerges like a gentle echo, preserved in the dust and glint of forgotten tools. The air carries a faint chill, laced with the earthy scent of damp soil and the subtle, woolly aroma of aged fibers, remnants of garments once worn by those who tended flocks across these highlands. One archaeologist, her hands steady and patient, traces the edge of a stone adze, its surface smoothed by centuries, glinting faintly in the dawn's first rays. The tool, unearthed from a shallow pit near the monumental gateway, speaks of a time when herders navigated the rugged terrain with llama and alpaca herds, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of the land. According to museum records from the National Museum of Archaeology in La Paz, such implements were essential for crafting shelters and corrals, symbols of a resilient society that flourished between 600 and 1000 AD. As the team works, the sun climbs higher, warming the cool stones and releasing a whisper of history into the air. The artifacts reveal intricate details. A chiseled bone hook, its tip still sharp beneath layers of patina, evoking the careful selection of grazing spots high in the mountains. Sensory memories linger in the texture of these finds, the rough weave of a fragment of woven grass, dusted with the fine particles of volcanic soil, or the cool weight of a polished obsidian scraper, its edges catching the light like distant stars. These items, documented in UNESCO reports on Tiwanaku's cultural heritage, illustrate how herders adapted to the harsh environment, their innovations echoing through time in the very fabric of Bolivian life today. In modern Bolivia, the shadow of these ancient practices falls softly over rural communities where descendants still led animals along similar paths, their traditions a quiet inheritance. Yet amid the excavation, a subtle mystery unfurls, one that teases the imagination with tales half-remembered and wholly lost. Whispers from UNESCO archives speak of petroglyphs and carvings that might once have told stories of heroic herders, their exploits etched into rock faces now weathered and faint. These forgotten herder tales, distinct from any grand epics, hint at personal sagas, perhaps of a shepherd who outwitted mountain storms or a family that forged unbreakable bonds with their flocks. The mystery lies in the gaps, the unspoken narratives that artifacts like a small, carved amulet suggest, its surface bearing faint lines that could be symbols of protection or loss. The archaeologists pause, their breath steady in the thin air, as they examine a cluster of tools nestled in the soil. One piece, a wooden spindle fragment adorned with faint engravings, carries the faint scent of aged resin, evoking the hands that once shaped it. In the soothing rhythm of their work, there's a subtle wit to the way these relics reveal themselves, as if the herders themselves are playing a gentle game, hiding clues for the curious. Museum records note similar finds in nearby sites, where such spindles were used not for wool alone, but as markers of status or storytellers' aids, preserving oral histories through subtle designs. As the day unfolds, the team delves deeper, the sensory tapestry of the site weaving a calming narrative. The soft crunch of gravel underfoot mingles with the distant call of an Andean goose, while the tools themselves offer tactile surprises, a flint knife with a handle worn smooth, its grip fitting the palm like an old friend's hand, or a clay whistle, its hollow form still echoing a faint, melodic tone when breath is passed through it. These details, drawn from historical examples and UNESCO preservation efforts, underscore the herders' ingenuity, their ability to craft tools that doubled as instruments of daily life and cultural expression. In the broader legacy, these discoveries bridge the past and present, reminding us of how Andean herders influenced agricultural practices that sustain Bolivia today. Their knowledge of seasonal migrations, detailed in museum ethnographies, lives on in community festivals where songs and dances mimic the movement of herds across the plains. Yet, the mystery persists, a soothing enigma that invites contemplation. What stories did those engravings hold? Perhaps tales of a herder who discovered a hidden valley, its entrance guarded by ancient stones, or legends of flocks that seemed to converse with the wind. These fragments, free from the weight of decline, were detailed crafts, offer a detached glimpse into consequences long past where the herder's disappearance left only echoes. The archaeologists, their faces softened by the golden light, share quiet observations, their voices a lullaby against the vast silence. One notes the way a stone weight, perfectly balanced for herding ropes, glimmers with embedded quartz, a natural wit in its design that made heavy loads feel lighter. Sensory details abound. The dry, wool-like texture of preserved fibers clinging to a tool's edge, the metallic tang in the air from exposed minerals, and the gentle warmth of the sun on unearthed surfaces. Historical accuracy, as per UNESCO guidelines, ensures that each find is contextualized within the Tiwanaku civilization's broader achievements, emphasizing sustainable herding techniques that prevented overgrazing and fostered biodiversity. As evening approaches, the mystery deepens, wrapping the site in a cloak of twilight. Forgotten herder tales, perhaps encoded in the subtle patterns of a carved bone, beckon like a half-remembered dream, urging a deeper exploration. In this calm revelation, the legacy endures, not as a static relic, but as a living thread in Bolivia's cultural tapestry. The tools, with their glinting stones and dusty textures, serve as bridges to a world where herders were stewards of the land, their stories waiting to be whispered anew. Yet, as the stars begin to emerge, casting a serene glow over the ruins, one can't help but wonder what other secrets lie buried. The archaeologists pack their findings with care, their movements a rhythmic dance of preservation, knowing that each artifact carries a piece of the puzzle. In the distance, the faint outline of the mountains whispers of continuity, of herders whose influence shapes the present in ways unseen. And so, as this chapter of discovery draws to a close, the path leads onward to the next whisper of history, where new tales may yet unfold.